necessarily finances and making just streamlining our interventions to really target the most vulnerable, but at the same time, not moving away from the policies that comforts the common man, whether it's in terms of education, whether it's in terms of housing and all these different things on our social network. We're not going to give up on this. We put the people of this country first, but obviously it'll be streamlined, so there won't be double dipping. And obviously with the reform of the public service, in the sense that it will be a more efficient one. It allows for upward mobility, but most importantly, it allows for efficiency so that there is not overspending or unnecessary spending. And definitely we're going to tighten up on quite a few areas, but also in terms of our revenue, we've identified quite a few areas that we can improve our revenue. So with all of this moving forward, I think we've done pretty well. The IMF was pleased with our progress, and we just have to continue on this track, and we should see our way through.
The Global View on Q, the big station. Insights into where the people of Dominica and the Caribbean came from, understanding our past, embracing our present, charting the way forward into our future. Together, eliminating poverty, embracing justice, peace, and togetherness. The Global
View. Hello, everybody. Very pleasant good evening to each and every one of you. Very, very warm welcome to you indeed in Radio Land and in internet world at home and abroad. Thank you so much for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. A warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's Tuesday, April 11, 2023, the 15th Tuesday of 2023. And it's right on the button of 8 p.m. at Q95, the big station. We're live on Facebook and YouTube as usual. Follow us at Q95 FM Radio. Check out our website, www.q95da.com. Share the live, like our pages, get the latest breaking news and reviews as it happens, when it happens, only on Q95, the big station. So tonight we're continuing to revive the spirit of graciousness, of love and peace, prosperity and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. And I have tonight another one-on-one exclusive conversation with former IMF financial economist, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, and now leader of the United Workers' Party, UWP. I will ask Dr. Fontaine to help us address some key issues tonight that are now facing our country, our economy, and our people, and to assist us with some answers as to where do we go from here. We heard Gypsy. So Dominicans are right now struggling with the high cost of living and inflation, and are now facing a misconstrued interpretation of an IMF report on macroeconomic growth in Dominica. But what is the real state of Dominica's economy? What does a 5% growth mean at this time? 5% of what and on what? What about the debt to GDP ratio and the climbing national debt? Will the 2023-2024 national budget provide relief and a sense of direction and a path to real growth for struggling Dominican men, women, and the elderly? Or is Dominica being led into a fool's paradise? What about the income and growth of the Dominican people and the Dominican family households? Foreign contractors and workers appear to be the ones receiving and repatriating all of the benefits from this capital investment in infrastructure. My very distinguished guest tonight, former IMF financial economist, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, is eminently qualified to bring clarity to these issues, and I'm sure that he will help us unravel the answers to these questions. I expect that Dr. Fontaine will, and I will ask him to do that, to give us a glimpse of his own ideas as to what a real forward-looking economic plan that drives current, midterm, and long-term national budget estimates should look like in order to make a paradigm shift to create the enabling environment, the policy environment, and other, to the space and the impetus to allow Dominican nationals to add value to Dominica's human and natural resources, to release the existing Dominican entrepreneurship and the new local enterprises, and to secure much needed private, local, and foreign investments-driven jobs, good paying jobs, foreign earnings, and real growth for Dominican nationals in agriculture, in agribusiness, processing, water, natural fruit beverages, essential oils, cannabis, herbs, teas and spices, tourism, manufacturing, knowledge industries, the financial and services sectors, just to name a few that in which we could become competitive. But you notice I placed the emphasis on agriculture and agribusiness right at the top, and ensure that the proceeds of Dominica's CBI programs get into Dominica's treasury, as was the case under the UWP, to finance local investors, entrepreneurs, and enterprises in these dynamic growth sectors. I'm sure we'll recall Mr. Sam Raphael and the Jungle Bay resorts, which got financed under the UWP scheme. All the money went to the treasury and he got a loan, which he then used successfully to build his hotel, and he did very well. So it can work that way if the money goes to the treasury. That's where it should go. That's where it belongs. I will ask Dr. Fontaine, what are the indicators in local balance that can be used to determine whether there is really good growth that can meaningfully impact ordinary Dominicans' everyday lives? Intellectual technical phrases like gross domestic product, GDP, gross national income, GNI, just do not cut it for ordinary Dominican families. I will ask Dr. Fontaine to explain the concept of GDP and the difference between normal and real GDP in layman's terms. We heard our finance minister just before the program, and Matt ran his comments a few hours ago on the talk on the block. So I'm sure Dr. Fontaine might want to take the opportunity to address that. So, will Dominicans keep walking the path towards a cryptocurrency precipice as their democracy and freedom continue to be eroded? What is really happening in respect to the secrecy surrounding the financing of the proposed international airport? Will that proposed airport be driven by professional airport management and marketing, and by expansion and diversification of the economy to ensure there is throughput for that airport to make it viable? Dominicans, as we know, are the only ones who can save themselves by heeding the writing on the wall and any signs of the destruction of their nation. But is it now time that Dominicans should stand firm and demand what is rightfully theirs? I ask again, are Dominicans satisfied with the political will to ensure genuine electoral reform and campaign finance reforms? The Phase 2 report from the Dennis Byron is not yet made public, but I do not think Dominicans should settle for less than strict residency requirements. Real residency requirements. We heard Dr. Andre define that clearly in one of our programs recently. Complete re-registration right there in Dominica. Totally free access to all media without any encumbrances. No conditions. Of course, no media is going to put out stuff if it's defamatory or libelous. But the point is there should be free access. There should be no dilly-dallying. The law should be clear and firm on that. And I believe also that in terms of this matter of the campaign finance reform, I certainly believe we need to have a fixed amount in the law, a reasonable amount, not an exorbitantly large amount that should be allowed per constituency for each political party. I would even think, I would dare say, I would recommend a figure of maybe easy $50 per constituency. I'm just throwing that out. It's nothing based on science or anything. I'm just throwing that out. You do the math. But will these reforms by themselves secure free and fair elections and good governance? Or will it require, as I've always been asking, will it require mass peaceful public gatherings of Dominicans to press their demand for good living wage jobs and real growth, and for real campaign finance, transparency and accountability on a level electoral playing field? Well, only time will tell. But stay tuned, call us, have your say as you do every Tuesday on the Global Geon Q with me, Mr. G, on the big station. And by the way, how and what are Dominicans really benefiting from the deal entered into by the leader of the DLP regime in office, Mr. Roosevelt Skerrit, with a potential fraudster to sell Dominica crypto coins, also known as Dominica fan tokens, that appear on the surface to be ready-made to offer a path that may allow buyers to secure Dominican digital IDs and potentially Dominican e-passports. And on another matter, hopefully Dr. Fontaine can address that in some way as well. When will we see electricity generated from geothermal energy after we have spent over $100 million in geothermal explorations? And will the talk of an eminent American Canadian University in Portsmouth stand the test of time in 2023? Will it deliver anything close to what the Ross University School of Medicine contributed to Dominica's GDP and to the living standards and quality of life of Dominicans, especially of the people in the Portsmouth area? But meantime, the Global View on Q is continuing to embrace Dominica's 45th anniversary of independence this November 2023, and we look forward to free and fair elections to preserve our democracy. So wherever you are in Dominica, in the region and globally, please tell your friends and associates, ask them to tune in and call in and join the conversation, get the answers to your questions, and be a part of the solutions. As usual, I want to say another huge shout out, hugs, much love, appreciation, a big thank you to our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, our police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, and other public and private sector persons. Happy to have you all with us tonight. We welcome every Dominican and every friend of Dominica. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community in Dominica, in the region and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, for keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console at Q95, doing what you always do, directing the traffic. We will take your calls a little later. Lambi will give you the on-air numbers, but the numbers are all printed on the homepage of our Q95 website at www.q95da.com, www.q95da.com. So you can go right there and you see all the numbers. So the people's voice is a priority tonight. Call us. We'll take your calls a little bit later. So let's get started. I want to go over now to former IMF financial economist and UWP leader, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, to get the ball rolling tonight. I hope that we will get some insights. I covered a number of areas. All of them have a financial component, a financial aspect to them. So I hope that he will give us some insights into how his qualifications and vast experience has shaped his local, national, and global vision for the best way forward for Dominica, and how you, Dr. Fontaine, would get the people of Dominica out of the dilemma of a never-ending cycle of poverty and, in some cases, mendicancy that we're currently witnessing. I hope you can tell us how you and your team, UWP, is going to do that for us. So I'll ask you to open your mic, Dr. Fontaine, and I go over to you now.
Hi, Sheridan. A very good evening to you and to Lambi and to many listeners. Lambi, it's great to see you. Sheridan, you raised so many important issues for discussion, and these are all matters that should concern all of us in Dominica. And I'm grateful for an opportunity to be able to address some of those, in particular, some of the issues around GDP and the performance of the economy and so on, because we've heard different persons within the government and even now the Minister of Finance literally gloating about a recent report from the IMF that indicated 4.5% growth. I think it's important for the listeners to understand exactly what that means, and we'll spend some time because I get the distinct impression that our politicians have been, preying on the ignorance of the people, because the Dominican public may not fully understand those various concepts. And because it's coming from the IMF, they will say, oh, great, our government is doing really, really well because the IMF says so. So we need to put that in perspective, because nothing in that report tells me that the IMF is happy with this government's performance. Bear in mind, the average growth levels for this country has been less than 1% over more than a decade, over more than 10 years, has been less than 1%. So if in 1 year, because you are starting to build an international airport, you're bringing in equipment, you have done a few projects in housing and so on, your GDP goes spikes to 4.5%. And that does not mean that everything is good and dandy. It does not mean that the poverty levels are any less than they were yesterday. It does not mean that the levels of hardships and suffering is any less. So I think it's important for us to put those numbers in perspective. But Mr. G, with your permission, and I think it will help a lot in that discussion. And as we talk about other issues, and all of them are linked, the budget issue, the electoral reforms. We are hearing now that there is supposed to be parliament on the 25th of April. What is being considered as far as electoral reforms are concerned. If I could just begin, and if your permission, just kind of give a very quick definition of gross domestic product and kind of relay in very basic language to the Dominican public what exactly that means and why it is important and how, what exactly we're talking about when we talk about gross domestic product. Now, quite simply, the gross domestic product or GDP, it is simply the measure of the value of all goods and services produced in the economy within a given year. Okay, that's your textbook definition. That's your anybody doing Economics 101. That will be the definition that you will find. The output of all goods and services produced in the economy within the year. All right. Now, when you talk about value, value involves two components. Value involves a price component and a quantity or an output component. Okay. So the value of the shirt that I am wearing is this physical shirt times a price. Okay. It might have cost me $10. Okay. So that's the value of the shirt. So what you try to do is you try to measure the value of all of the goods and all of the services, banking, insurance, retail services, all of those services that are provided within the economy. Now, there are different approaches to actually measuring, and that's where it gets very interesting. There are different approaches. The one approach that is widely used is called the production approach, where you segment or you break up the economy into various segments, if you like, or sectors. So you have the agriculture sector, you have the fisheries sector, you have the manufacturing sector, you have the government services sector, you have the banking sector, you have the insurance, So you have the different insurance, you have different sectors within the economy, and you try to put a value on the production within those sectors. So that is one way of doing it. Another way is that you use this very famous equation, C plus I plus G plus X minus M, okay? Or your consumption spending plus your investment spending plus your government spending plus your net exports, the difference between your exports and your imports. And that also gives you a valuation of your gross domestic product. Now, when you use, and there is a third measure, which is the value added. So you try to see what value is added to goods and services. Now, let me explain in very, very simple terms, and we can understand it better if we think of a very simple economy. Let's say an economy is producing only one good, all right? So let's assume that there is this economy, and then once you understand this one good concept, you can multiply it to any number of goods, any number of sectors, any number of services. So let's assume that in year one, in this country, you produce goods worth $100. Okay, so let's make it very, very simple. So you're producing shoes. You produce 100 pairs of shoes during this year. 100 pairs of shoes. You sell these shoes for $10 each. Those pairs of shoes. So you have 100 pairs of shoes. You sell that for $10. That's $1,000. Your total output for that year is $1,000. Okay, because you have 10 shoes valued at $100. That is $1,000. That's your total gross domestic product for that year. In the second year, you're still producing shoes. You produce those same 10 shoes but you sell those shoes for $20. So your gross domestic product has increased now from $1,000 to $2,000 because you've also produced 10 shoes in year 2, but now you're selling them at a higher price. You've doubled the price, so you're making more. Your output has increased. Not the output, the value of your gross domestic product has increased. Now that is what we refer to as the nominal value. Okay, the nominal value, because bear in mind you have two components: the quantity of shoes produced by the price. In year 1, you produce 10 shoes by 10 shoes. You produce 100 shoes, sorry, by $10, $1,000. In year 2, you produce the same 100 pairs of shoes, but you now sell them for $20. Your output has now increased from $1,000 to $2,000. You say your gross domestic product has increased. However, your GDP growth, your real increase, which is what these figures that we have been quoted about, the 4.5%, the 1%, is really what is referred to as the real GDP. You have to remove the price effect. Okay? In that case, it is very simple because in year 1, you produce 100 pairs of shoes. In year 2, you produce 100 pairs of shoes. You have shown no real growth. Although your nominal GDP has increased from 1,000 to 2,000, that is only on account of the price having increased. But in terms of what your actual output was, you're still producing the same amount as you did last year. So in year 2, you produce 100 pairs of shoes as you did in year 1. Therefore, your real GDP has not increased. You would say that in year 2, you have 0 GDP growth. Okay, so the correct measure would have been 0 GDP growth. Now, let's take this a little further. Let's assume that in year 2, instead of making 100 pairs of shoes, let's assume you decide to make 110 pairs of shoes. Okay, 110 pairs of shoes, you sell by the same $20. But because you have moved from 100 to 110, it means that to make this extra 10 pairs of shoes, you would have had to hire probably 2 or 3 new workers, because the workers you had in year 1 can no longer produce. You now have to hire because you're making an additional amount of shoes. Okay, you're making 110 pairs of shoes now. You have to hire additional workers. And that is where real GDP becomes important. Because you're moving from 100 to 110, you have to hire new workers, you're creating new incomes, you're creating unemployment, you're reducing poverty. And that is why the real GDP growth is very important. You're looking at the value, not just the value, but the actual output of goods and services. Okay, so I hope people understand and you make that distinction. So when the government talks about, or when the IMF talks about the 4.5% increase, they're referring to the physical, if you like, quantity of goods and services that have been produced in that year. Okay, now.
So Thomson, so it is understandable, therefore, that whereas this growth, this GDP, is being talked about as 5%, it is understandable why the ordinary person in Dominica who's not getting the jobs, who's not able to export the agricultural produce, exactly, or whose business was shut down for some whatever reason, these people are not feeling any impact. As a matter of fact, while we're talking about this 5% GDP, these people are seeing absolutely no growth. They still have to go to the supermarket and face the high inflationary prices. They still have to pay more for the gas and so on. But if you look at the situation, as you mentioned that now, if you look at the situation of the public officers, if you give them a 0.5 and a 1% and so on, that cannot cut it. Because in fact, there's been absolutely no growth. I mean, the productivity is the same production, maybe even less, as a matter of fact. But what is really showing up here in this GDP that you're talking about, I believe, is all these capital investments in infrastructure, where only foreigners mostly have been employed and the money is being repatriated.
Right, exactly. You hit it exactly on the head, and that is where the problem is. It is, in a way, you think of it as disjointed growth. Now, let me compare this, for example, with what happened in China in the 1990s and so on. What happened in China was a largely agrarian economy. Millions and hundreds of millions of people in poverty. And then they began to pursue a very open policy. So they invited all of those Western firms. They had these economic zones. They invited those Western zones, and they began to produce Nikes and jeans and iPhones and every conceivable thing you can think of, item that you can think of, consumer item that you can think of. But what that meant effectively is that they were providing jobs. So with every new production, they would open a new factory. Okay, and you'll find China was recording double-digit growth for many, many years, 15, sometimes 12, 15% of growth for many years. But that translated to individuals coming out of poverty, because now this person who was languishing on a farm in rural China is now working, making iPhones. He's now earning an income out of this. So they're recording increases in iPhone production every year, increases in suits or whatever it is, in Nikes and so. But there is a real tangible growth. It's like in Dominica in the 1990s under the United Workers' Party and under the Dominica Freedom Party prior to that, you had the agriculture sector booming. Agriculture sector was the one driving that growth. 70% of the Dominican public lives in the rural areas of Dominica. So when bananas was king, when bananas was our green gold, it meant that that was impacting the lives of thousands of Dominican households. Farmers could send their children to school because we were producing increasing numbers of bananas that were going to the UK. You could send your children to school. You could buy your own house. You could build your own house, in the countryside. You could put money into the bank to help build up or boost up the banking system. That was right. That was widespread. It was within the agriculture sector. A lot of that growth was taking place. Now, compare then to now. A lot of the growth, as you rightly pointed out, is being driven by capital spend. Remember I said if you measure in GDP using the approach consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. If government spending in that year, which is what happens, suddenly increases exponentially, you're going to find a big increase in GDP. Okay, but where is that going? The beneficiaries of this GDP is not the average Dominican person. It is limited, it is targeted largely to foreigners because, on the airport project, it is Chinese workers. Even to build the housing projects that would contribute towards GDP, it's targeted towards foreign workers. Now, why is that also important? The way a dollar is spent makes all the difference. When there was agriculture, for example, when a banana farmer sold a box of bananas, he got paid for that box of bananas. That Dominican farmer, that's now reflected in a 5% growth in the economy, now takes his dollar that he's earned from the sale of a box of bananas. He then goes to his local shop, okay, and he buys a beer for $5. Now that has a multiplier effect because now that $5, the shop owner can then take that $5 now and buy something else. And you have this multiplier effect throughout the economy. So that shop owner can now hire an assistant in the shop because the local farmer is coming to buy and the shop owner is too busy or needs extra help to service the farmers coming in to buy in the shop. So she can employ somebody else or two people. So that creates additional activity, additional opportunities. What's happening now with the construction sector, when this money is paid to a foreigner, he's not going to a local shop in Dominica or to a local concern in Dominica. This individual is going to send this money outside of Dominica. You have a net outflow. So whatever you have gained up front, you're now losing in the back end for what we call leakage because the money is going out of the country. It is not as beneficial. So we have what we call beneficial growth and we have non-beneficial growth. And what we have under this Dominica Labour Party, I'm sorry to inform the Minister of Finance, is really growth that is not beneficial per se to the average Dominican. And we need to understand that. So I would not be out there boasting. I can understand if this growth was coming from agriculture, if this growth was coming from the construction sector, where the majority of employment was with and by Dominicans, I would be the first one shouting hooray. But I cannot be praising this. in a situation where the majority of Dominicans are not seeing the benefits, poverty continues on the rise. And the minister himself said it. The minister made a very telling, in his speech, a very telling, what he called an acceptance, when he says, we'll continue to maintain this support to the vulnerable people. Now, if this growth was beneficial, you'd be saying that last year we were able to win X amount of people away from public support because the economy was expanding. These individuals no longer need us to support them. They are now finding jobs. But you say, no, we need to continue to maintain and support these individuals. So it means that the benefits are not accruing to the people. So you still have to maintain, give this $300 a month. You still have to give the social programs. You have to have the social safety nets. That is a very clear indication that the GDP that you're talking about, the growth that you're talking about, is not sustainable. And it's not widespread.
Now, if we were to relate that to the whole notion of planning, because as you know, Thomson, it's so important to have a plan. And when you look at that plan, to look at the policies that you need to put in place in order to create the enabling environment for to get that kind of growth, your expansion in manufacturing, agriculture, and agribusiness, and so on. The policy environment has to be there. But from what you're saying, I gather that you're saying that it seems as if the planning was totally opposite of what it should be, because what is coming out from what the minister is saying is that, yes, they made a plan, but the plan was to find passport money, the people's money, and then use that money and put it in capital investments in infrastructure, and then employ foreign contractors to do the work, and then let them employ foreign workers to work to get these jobs done. And then of course the government then comes out and boasts that we were so successful that these foreign contractors and these foreigners we employ to work in these capital projects, they sent out $214 million overseas, and our people were standing on the side and looking while that money is flowing out of the country. What does that tell us about planning? And I want you to talk a little bit about the whole question of planning and budgeting, because we have a budget coming up. Let's wait and see what is going to come out in that budget, whether it is going to be a shift, a paradigm shifter, whether it's going to be a change, because at one time what we heard, if not passports, then what? And agriculture was a has-been industry. So let's talk about that a little bit, Thomson.
Yeah, and talking about that, Mr. G, it reminds me of a statement that Hartley Henry made in, I think, at the end of the 2014 elections, when he said the elections in Dominica was an economic boon to Barbados, right? Because the government of Dominica, the Labour Party, had spent millions of dollars on Barbados firms. They had done printing, they had bought T-shirts, hats, and jobs that Dominicans could have done, probably Deepex or other companies in Dominica could have done. They gave those jobs to Barbadians. And Hartley Henry went on radio to say, hooray, it has an economic boon to Barbados. All right? Similar thing happening there. We have had an economic boon, but not for the Dominican, not for the average Dominican, but for the foreigner. And that to me is extremely sad. I remember when the government of Dominica started construction of the State House, and I was absolutely stunned to find out that they were actually hiring Chinese workers to build the Dominica State House, because this was, after all, a loan that was given to them by the Chinese, a loan that they would have to pay back. So if you're giving me a loan, so I go to a bank for a loan, the bank is giving me a loan, and the bank is telling me, no, you have to hire, you have to take my people to build or something, and you cannot hire your own people, you cannot put your family members to work to benefit from that money I'm giving you. That's exactly what happened. And I could not believe that our government had agreed to that type of relationship. But it is even worse now. It's to the point now where it's not only Chinese, it is Trinidadians, it is St. Lucians, it is Vincentians, and it really says a lot about the way this government operates. So what this government has done effectively is to create a group of people that are now extremely poor in Dominica. And the Minister of Finance is now saying we need to sustain these people, rather than saying, how can we create jobs for these people? How can we create in this, as we plan, as we work out our budget, how can we create jobs for these people? And that to me is a serious problem. In the area of planning, Mr. G, we've seen a complete mismanagement of the budget process. So the government it takes one budget to Parliament that everybody agrees upon, and months later it comes out with a supplementary budget that is almost as large as the budget that was presented. And very often, this money is already spent. So you have a situation where the budget process is completely out of whack. It is not policy oriented. It is simply guided by the whims and fancy of one person, really, because I don't see any help coming from any of the other ministers. I don't see anybody within this government that can really provide the kind of guidance or control in terms of what needs to be done. And quite frankly, our current Minister of Finance is completely out of his depth. Listening to the way he talked about the figures and the way he explained to the Dominican public, I mean, why are the Dominican public being punished like this? You know, it's almost as if this government has determined that it's going to do everything in its power to ensure that the Dominican public remains poor, impoverished, and dependent on the Dominican Labour Party. That to me is the only policy, that's the only thing I can read out of this policy that is so terribly misguided. A policy that is not geared towards creating unemployment. A policy that, as you said, that should really be focused on, we are making these windfalls from the sale of passports. How can we boost our manufacturing sector? How can we create 2 or 3 new factory jobs that can develop our essential oils, that can develop the cannabis industry, medical marijuana? How can we do that? Support an agro business like Bello? How can we maintain Bello and expand Bello? How can we go back to banana production? How can we go back to coconut production? How can we ensure that we have a DCP back in place? That to me is what you need. That is what shows a government that cares about the people. That is what shows a government that is determined to create opportunities and employment for the Dominican public. But you have a government that is simply there boasting about the great things it is doing for foreigners. I have a serious problem with that type of government. And I hope the people of Dominica are taking note. I hope the people of Dominica who continue to vote this government understand the tremendous harm that this particular government is putting them under, the tremendous strain. You mentioned the public servants. I mean, when you think that there has been absolutely no increase in wages, we talked about GDP. As you produce goods and services, prices are going up. You know, as you produce goods, you have to probably spend more. You know, the prices are going up. But what about incomes? So you're comparing something that we speak about in economics is the incomes policy, where you try to match people's income to make sure that they maintain a certain living standard, in that your prices do not run way ahead. So, for example, if you're making $1,000 and you're able to buy $1,000 worth of goods, let's say, just make it very simple, that works out to 100 items. Okay, so your $1,000 can give you 100 items, on average $10. Okay, so you're able to buy every month for $1,000. 100 items. That includes your haircuts, your whatever service that your vehicle, your bus transportation, your groceries and so on. So, but at the end of the day, it works out to, let's make it very simple, 100 items at an average price of $10. Okay, those items include both goods and services. So that's you as the individual. Now the price level is going up. All right, the price now has gone up in year 2. The price has now gone up from $10 to $12 on average. You now have a 2 over 10, a 20% increase in prices. Or let's make it easy. Let's say a 10%. Let's say it moves from 10 to 11, moves by $1. Okay, you have a 10% increase in inflation. Now, if you maintain this $1,000, but with this 10% increase, you can no longer afford the 100 items. You can now probably only afford, probably in that case, 94 items. So it means that as an individual, you have to cut back. You probably have, instead of going to the barber twice in a month, you probably now have to go once in a month. Instead of buying, 2 liters of oil, you probably have to buy 1 liter of oil. You have to make real changes.
Let's put this in a slightly different way, right? You remember our friend Paul Joseph?
Yeah,
Paul
sure.
Joseph from Laplane. He said
Pastorally.
Paul Joseph from Laplane.
Oh, Paul Joseph. Oh, this other Joseph. Okay.
Our Paul Joseph. He said to us,
sure, yes.
his economy, his
He should rest in peace.
He said it was that at one time his wife used to give him two chicken wings. Then it got down to 1 chicken wing. That tells you what you're talking about.
Exactly.
In his pot, in his plate right at home. That is what is happening right now. Now,
exactly.
let us do a quick comparison so I can let you comment on some of that and we'll do a lot more work on it than I can. There are 2 eras, let's compare. The first era was Edward Leblanc, because you see, these generations that we have here now, these young people, they only know of one government, which is this particular DLP regime, right? They don't know of any other government, those that are 30 years old or younger. But there was this man called Edward Leblanc. He had no CBI, he had no passport. So when people say about if not passports, then what? Leblanc had the real Labour Party, the real Leblanc had the answer. Because what he did is he put policies in place so that the farmers got wealthy. There was real GDP growth. They added value to their work, to their labor, to their soil, and so on. They planted, and they, as you said, they were able to buy their homes, build their homes, and buy their transport cash. So this story we're hearing about, if not agriculture, or agriculture has been, or if not passports, then what? There's an era that shows that you can do it, and it can be done again. You still have the soil, the good soil. You still have that, and you still have persons who are skilled, who are hardworking, who are willing to do the work. Get the markets for them. That's what they need. Put the money. Let's look at compare the other era, and I'll let you come in on that. There's a gentleman called Julius Timothy, bless his soul. Wish him all the best. He's going through some challenges, some health issues now. He's out now trying to get himself fixed up. I really wish him all the best. But during the UWP, Julius Timothy was the finance minister. There was also what we call a re-engineered CBI program. And it is under that program, the money went into the treasury. People like Sam Raphael, they were able to borrow money from there and very successfully, I say very successfully, build their product, build a hotel in Jungle Bay that did very well. In other words, Thomson, what I'm saying is this: the money went to the treasury, Sam and other people came on board and they did very well. Why is it we had to change that and then let the money go all kind of places? We don't know where it is. And then what could happen that the government could then put a policy in place if you want the ordinary people, the entrepreneurs that you're talking about, the people who are doing the little thing, the cottage industries and the herbs and spices and teas and the cannabis industry, you can really do it and say, listen, we're going to take a policy, we're going to make cannabis big, we're going to put $1 billion into cannabis. Right? You saw a story this afternoon, somebody, I don't know if it's true, but some UK person went and seemed to have got some license to do in major cannabis industry in Antigua. So this is something that is happening, and we know some moves are being made in St. Vincent. The point I'm making is this: if instead of we looking all over the place for 4 billion or whatever it is we cannot find, why not take 2 billion of that, put it in the treasury, just like was done in the UWP, then take some of that money, give it over to the farmers in agriculture, to the people in agribusiness. Don't let their business close down, for God's sake. Put it in there, expand the businesses, make them viable, give them the resources they require, the training, and help them with the marketing. All the agribusiness, and so on. Wouldn't that have been really a bigger impact on the lives of ordinary people? Because what you'd get then is that Dominicans would come and borrow that money at reasonable interest rates, build their businesses, create exports, create jobs, and add value. And then you'd have real GDP growth, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you could not have said it better. And it baffles the mind, Mr. G, as to why this government has not done this. And part of it goes back to the attitude we see being reflected now, the support of foreigners over Dominicans. And I think it comes out from an all-consuming need by this Labour Party government to remain in office. And they worked out very early on that the strategy to remain in office is to keep the people poor, keep them dependent, and make sure that these are the handouts that are going to keep us there. And to me, as sinister as this sound, as stupid as it may sound to some people, that's exactly what is going on. I mean, how else do we explain this behavior? How else do we explain the complete failure to use those resources to build up sustainable sectors of the economy, to build up the agriculture, to provide inputs to the farmers, to do those kind of things that would allow the average Dominican to grow? Why not use this money to better the public service? I heard the Minister of Finance talking about they're going to do a merit-based system now for the public servants. I mean, 20 years as a government, and now you're understanding the worth of the public servant. I mean, it is mind-boggling to me that none of that is done. But when you think about it, and when you think in your sober reflection, you really think that this is simply a vote-winning policy by this government. That's what the policy is. How do we get the vote? And we get the vote not by promoting economic growth, not by creating jobs, not by getting people out of poverty, not by creating a strong middle class, because if we do, they will challenge us. But we create a dependency class who will not challenge us, who will even curse people like myself and you who are trying to open Konoka Ese Uvezio, as you're trying to open their eyes. They are not grateful, They're cursing you. They're saying it's because you don't like the government, But we're just trying to show people that there is, in fact, a different way. And that is the way it should be done. I mean, St. Kitts did it very successfully. St. Kitts have been able to take their revenues from the CBI program to do a lot. I remember when I was in St. Kitts in 2012, I worked between 2010 and 2012, working on their debt. We'll talk about debt in a little bit, but developing a debt strategy for St. Kitts and Nevis. Although that was not my assignment, but because they knew of my experience at the IMF, they called me and asked me, how can we invest? What can we do with our CBI money to expand it, to increase it? What areas should we be looking to? And we had a very good discussion with the policymakers there in St. Kitts, because they were looking for answers. They were looking for creative ways. I've never received such a call from my government to ask, how can we make the CBI, increase the CBI, lengthen it? But this government is talking to individuals in this very dark and murky world of Tron and, and so on, and probably losing money. Probably that's where some of the millions have disappeared, because you can lose your shirt in those bets that are made in that cryptocurrency market. But we're not going to go in there as yet.
Not yet, Thomson, because I want to stay on this a little bit before we really go to Tron and the cryptocurrency, because that's important. But Thomson, you spoke about St. Kitts, right? That is, we can learn some lessons from how they've managed their money. Now, let us not forget that we have a very dear friend right at home in China, right? China is a friend of Dominica. That's what we say, right? Now, if you go home to China's home, that is not the policy that they have. China is for Chinese. Many, many millionaires and multi-millionaires are developing in China almost on a daily basis.
Daily basis, absolutely.
Millionaires per capita than the United States and Europe combined.
Yeah.
China
is minting the middle class, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, China is creating a middle class. Why is it that we're doing just the opposite? Mm-hmm. Why is it that we're sending all our money out, giving the investment to the foreigners, giving all the jobs to the foreigners, and then not allowing our people to grow and become as wealthy as the foreigners? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be nice, Thomson, for a change? That old lady somewhere in Mount John can now say to her daughter in New York, I'm going to send you $1,000 next week. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Because
Yes.
in the days when Leblanc was there with agriculture, that's what the farmers did. They send the children to school. They paid for the children to the school.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Without fail.
So why is it that we picking and choosing what policy we want that seem to be absolutely not benefiting the local ordinary Dominican? Why is that? I really would like to know the answer. What is causing that?
Yeah, but that to me, that's where the answer lies. It has worked for this government because they continue to get a certain number of persons in Dominica voting for them on just on that policy. Okay, because they are guarding their whatever it is that they will get, whether it's a free house, a free apartment, whether it's a $300 a month, they're guarding that. And the way they guard that is to keep voting in this Dominican Labour Party government. But at the end of the day, it is not sustainable. At the end of the day, these people will only be reduced in poverty. Because as we said, inflation is always increasing. Price levels are always going up. And if your $300 is not being increased to 500, then to 6, then to 8, you're already behind the curve. You're already realizing that, whereas before you could probably buy a sack full of groceries or a plastic of groceries, so to speak. Now you can probably buy a half. In a year's time, it will go down to a quarter. So these are very real impacts that we have on the average Dominican. So that's a very sinister plan that has been pulled on the people of Dominica, and I'm very sorry to say that it has worked. But the question is, how do we reverse it? And I think programs like what we're having, where we educate the Dominican public, where we let them know, so that when we get a chance to be on the ground with the Dominican public, these are the kind of things that we want to be telling. These are the kind of things we need to be discussing with the Dominican public, where this government has gone wrong. Not blasting personalities, not cursing and cursing, but talking about things that matter to them. How, as a party, we can make your lives better, because we understand that the way we improve your life is to invest in the things that you can work in. Invest in the factories, invest in the agriculture, invest in the services, invest in tourism. Give you an opportunity to make money and to grow the middle class. And the other thing, the minister spoke about education, continuing education, but even that policy is misguided, because they decided that you just send students overseas to study. Yeah, but at the end of the day, is it beneficial to Dominica? All right, so you might actually see government spending on services. Your GDP is reflecting an increase because this year you sent 100. So education services, you sent 100 this year. Next year you sent 150. You have a 50% increase in education services because you're sending more people overseas to study. But at the end of the day, are these individuals coming back to Dominica? Are they contributing in a meaningful way to Dominica? Are they studying areas that are beneficial to Dominica? So even taking a closer look at our policies. I remember when I was in Dominica as a student and I had to go to study and got a Canadian government sponsored scholarship. I was bonded. Okay, I was supposed to come back. That's exactly what I did. As somebody that was bonding, I went overseas, did my first degree, and came back and worked for 6 years in government, calculating GDP nonetheless, but I gave back. As that does not happen any longer. No one, I'm told, is bonded these days. All right. So you can take government's money, study, and then you stay overseas to build the United States. Not that your help is needed, but you will still stay there nonetheless.
But Thomson, even if you try to bond people, if you do not plan your economy, plan it ahead. This is the kind of economy we're going to have. These are the sectors that we're going to push. This is where we're going to get our growth. This is where we're going to make people generate wealth. And therefore, you're going to train people now to fill the jobs that are coming. If you don't make that kind of plan and make those kind of projections, then you will not have a training and education policy that is going to redound to the benefit of those projects that are coming. And if you're only going to need 5 lawyers and you get 20, even if you bond them, you can't get them a job. You have to release them. So the point I'm making is that you have to make a plan for what the economy is going to be And forget about all this thing about agriculture has had been and the CBI. Listen, the CBI, the days of the CBI are numbered. We know the kind of pressure that the Americans and the Europeans are bringing now to try to end this thing. We're not sure what it's going to be like in 5 years. We have absolutely no idea. When you're speaking to people on the ground, for example, wouldn't it be nice to let them know, you know something, this CBI, we're not sure how much longer it's going to last. So we think that the best thing to do is to use the money that we're making from it, that we're raking in from it now, put it in the treasury and begin to diversify in the economy. So that all the young people who are making creams and some from cannabis and from vetiver and all essential oils and creating all those things and soaps, give them some of that money. So you are preparing to have an economy there so that when the CBI thing, the bottom comes out, you have an economy built up. You have a manufacturing sector that's built up because you are financing it. You are training people to work in it and to develop it and to develop, they manage it and so on and to market it. That is what you should be doing. Putting that money in the treasury and then using that money to build your local people. Let them develop their enterprises and you help them market so that they can become wealthy. When the CBI thing disappears, we have an economy and we have added value to all our local talent. They've used our human. Look at the Singapore model. You know, build on that model. It's there. It's an example that we can see. Why are we behaving as though we're not seeing what's going on around us?
You know, and yeah, and one of the things I can give the government something else to try. You know, they have this small business unit where you give people $5,000 loans, and I'm told in most cases they just take it and go to St. Martin on a shopping spree, or at least go overseas with it. Instead of doing that, why not have a competition, a yearly contribution, where you have young people compete, an ideas project. They present a project, and the project should have a few elements. One of the elements is that that project must be able to create a certain number of jobs. It must be able to be exported to create foreign exchange. Okay, and people come, they pitch their ideas, they develop their business plans, they do the market surveys and so on, and they come and they pitch. And then they said, okay, we'll give the two brightest ideas, we'll fund you fully, totally. And the only thing is that you agree that you will pay us all back over a number of years. As you start to make profits and so on, you will pay you back over a number of years. Just by doing that, you might spend a few $1 million, but you're going to have homegrown companies. You're going to have young people pushing the envelope. And when you have this energy of youth, when you have young people pushing something with the enthusiasm, with their zeal for life, with their desire to do things, to be creative, you can get a lot done. They're going to be creating the jobs. They're going to be creating the inflows of foreign currencies. And before you know it, you're nice, you know, you're getting good ideas, you're getting people to do things. And the same people that you're setting to study overseas are now anxious to come back to work in a Dominican company that now has a brand internationally that is now known out there. You know, these are things that this government could have and should have done. You know, and that is something that we are offering as a United Workers' Party government. We are offering, and I'm putting the idea out there, not in any way concerned that this government will steal, because knowing that they're not concerned about the young people of Dominica, they're not going to steal this idea. So I can safely propose it to let Dominica, but you know, that is what, as a United government, we will do. We will have this knowledge. There's one fly that's making my life extremely difficult.
That happens.
It's just buzzing all around my face. Yes. So,
but you know, Thomson,
yeah.
Let me tell you something. Here's another idea in terms of a policy. Wouldn't it be a better policy to say, you know what, I'm going to create this matching credit grants. So as you said, so somebody, they want $50,000. So you give them $25,000 as a grant and you get $25,000 as a loan. Why do I think that makes sense? I think it makes a lot more sense to have that policy where you spend your money on your local people who are enterprising, who have the skills and the enthusiasm and they want to create wealth and to create jobs and exports and so on, I'd rather give it to them than to just simply give it to foreign contractors and workers who go to simply send it outside. So $214 million could have gone to Dominicans to build enterprise and jobs and wealth and exports in Dominica, rather than just send it outside. I think it's a better policy to give it away to Dominicans.
Absolutely. I mean, and in that way, could we not have saved Benjo Simas? Could we not have saved Paul Passeron? Could we not have saved Bellows? Could we not have saved these guys who used to make this really nice these bush teas and so on, blows agro products. I mean, you can name a string of businesses that could have been saved if there was such a policy in place that showed a concern to the people of Dominica, concern about building up entrepreneurship, and just creating, Dominicans enterprising. Dominicans are bright people. They survive, they do well, they outperform wherever they go. So imagine giving those opportunities in Dominica to do stuff. They would do it. But you find the overriding thing is the access to credit. The banks have not been necessarily friendly to you. If you try to get a business loan in Dominica, you have to sell your grandmother in the process to get it. I mean, that's how difficult it is. Whatever it is that they're asking you for. So you're not going to get help that way. It has to be deliberate government policy to create jobs that way, to create these opportunities. As we said, it can be done this way. And at the end of the day, if you create successful companies, they will be able to pay you back down the road, and you can have a revolving fund, so you set up 2 or 3 very strong, powerful companies. They then pay back into the treasury. You can then use this fund in a revolving way to do others. This can be done, So I am announcing there, Mr. J, as a matter of policy, that under a United Workers' Party government, we'll have a very strong business development unit that will do just that. It will foster entrepreneurship. It will identify young enterprising businesses, and it will provide support to existing businesses with a view to creating jobs, creating employment opportunities, driving the country's exports, and attracting individuals from overseas to come back into the country. That is going to be a holistic policy that we will pursue under this. And the way we'll do this is that this funding will be done through a process of grant and loan financing.
Now, Thomson, sometimes simple is good, right? I sometimes like simple little ideas. I love crabapps. I don't know any Dominican who don't like crabapps. I don't know any Dominican who has brought crabapps overseas, that everybody not diving into it. They love crabapps. There's something special about our crabapps. Now, the Chinese are our friends, Thomson. They know, and they can probably help us to go and cultivate all the crabs we need out there in their natural environment, natural habitat. We don't have to have season for crab. If we go and cultivate them right there, bring the extra, let them help us. And our forestry people probably have some of the answers to our local people. Put them in there and let us grow crabs so we have millions of crabs. So we don't have to be worrying about crab season. Can you imagine, Thomson, if we can get 100 households, women just love this thing. They make 100 crabapps a day and sell one at $10. That's $1,000 a day, Thomson. That is the revenue, the gross revenue that's coming to your household for that day, right? Now, I'm just saying that why don't we think about those things? You don't think a lot of people will be excited to be able to stay right at home, do your normal cooking, and a lot of people are doing that now anyway, and make crabapps. Now, why not give these people the money to do that? Take that money, put it in, grow the crabs, make sure you get the real nice crabs in the natural environment, make them really grow prolifically, and then just sell the crabs to these people. Second, Thomson, sometimes I heard some time ago about some man who was selling coconuts, and somebody was criticizing him and said all kind of things about coconut man. Whenever I go to Florida, I go to Miami, and there's a couple of guys there. They have a van, and they come there. You know what they have in it? The thing is, it has There's chillers in it, and nothing has gallons and gallons of coconut water. They grow those coconuts there in Florida, you know. They grow right there. And this guys, and the guy has a little thing there, and he'll take, if you want a coconut for, he'll cut it for you, pour it out for you, open it, and take your nana, the food, put it in a thing for you. Or if you just want to take one and you raise it as in a 1 liter or a gallon or what, he'll just, but it's available. In other words, that's a major industry. It's there every single day. One coconut tree in a year can give you so many coconuts. Thomson. If you have 1 million coconut trees on the island, think about it. You can practically get 1 million coconuts every day.
Yeah. So, you know, Mr. J, I wonder more and more about this government. You know, I was having a conversation, myself and Honorable Linton. We were having a conversation one time with the Chinese ambassador. And he told us, I'm not really believing any, but he told us that, you know, he loves this coal pot soap. In fact, every time he goes back to China, he buys a couple of cartons to take to his friends in China. It is such a good soap and so on. So we asked him, would he consider opening up the market for us? You know, the ambassador indicated that nobody in government had approached them with that idea. Nobody. He said nobody within the government had asked us about this. You know, and here we were in opposition trying to see if that is something that we could do. Just going on to something that's already there. A soap that's already been produced on a very small scale, but has been there, consistent quality. You know, a soap I also love. I always have my version of that soap. But nothing has been done about it, you know, and it has remained all of these years. Coalport has just remained this very small company, probably employing a few people. But when that company could have been a DCP by now, it should have been a DCP, just with the right support, the right direction, the right policy direction, you know. And you talk about all of these young entrepreneurs who just need help. You know, we do not have this abundance. Like in the US, for example, if you want to start a business, you can go to a venture capitalist. There are people who have huge deep pockets, and they will take a chance on you. They will give you the money, but at least as a business person, you have access to that capital, and you have enough capital to set up your business and to make sure that you have money for the first 6 months or so that you can run it until it starts making its own. You don't have that in Dominica. That's why you need the intervention of government, okay? But you need a government who understands, who wants to help you. But every example we've given, from the politics, the printing of T-shirts to go to Barbados, to the providing of jobs for drivers to drive dump trucks and Caterpillar operators to import them into Dominica, when our people are sitting, tells you this government is not concerned about the people of Dominica. And what is it that the people of Dominica cannot understand about this? It is so clear to me, at least to say this, you know, that things that Dominicans can and should be doing, areas where the government should be encouraging Dominicans, has not been done. And that's why, Mr. G, as a party, we are prepared to change that. The United Workers' Party will be able to provide these opportunities to Dominicans. We've languished for so long. 72,000 people. We should be the envy of this. The same way our physical land is the envy of the world. Our enterprise, our industry, our ability to create and care for our people will one day become the envy of the world. But for that to happen, we need a change of government.
Just before we transition to cryptocurrency, and we will do that shortly. And I will shortly ask Lambi to give the people the numbers so we can open the lines for a few minutes. Thomson, here's what I want to say. Our biggest resource really is our people. Let me just make myself clear on that. We've been looking at our people, and our people are doing things. The young people are not lazy. They're doing things. They're creating things. They're creating enterprise. All they need is the help and the support. Right now, if you look around in all the communities in Namibia, you have young people are doing things, creating products with local raw materials, you know. They are doing that and they're selling, but what they can do is limited because they do not have they do not have the capital and the resources and the ability to go out there and market on their own, because it costs money to go out there and market a small amount of product. So the marketing is not there, the financing structure is not there, but these people are very enthusiastic and they're creating some great product. I know that because we talk to them all the time, and I've heard them on the radio promoting their products. I mean, young people are already extracting cannabis oils and using that to make products. They're doing that and they're telling us they're doing that. What is the reluctance that we have to industrialize this thing? What is this thing about 2 grams of smoke all over the place when these people could be becoming wealthy by going into industries with the cannabis? I'm not so sure why is it that kind of thinking, what is it that what is holding us back from that kind of thinking? Because it's all there, other people are doing it.
Yeah, it's a misguided government. You know, if this government was winning elections on its score sheet, you know, if we're having, and that's why the whole question of electoral reform is tied into our discussion, because if the government was one where they were forced to perform, and on that basis will get reelected, we'd have a different situation in Dominica. The fact of the matter is they have a model of winning that is not based on their performance, based on, as I said, on creating a certain set that is dependent on them, and then they can go back for that vote so that that vote is bought. You know, that's what. So at the end of the day, they have no desire to think, they have no desire to plan, they have no desire to be concerned about the Dominican public. At the end of the day, they're laughing all the way to the bank personally, and the rest of the Dominican public are clearly catching hell. And that's where we are.
You don't think it's any accident?
No, it's not. No, that's deliberate policy. That's a deliberate policy to keep the people impoverished, to win election, and to say, because that is the philosophy. The philosophy is, how do we win the next election? It is not how do we create a utopia. It's not how do we create opportunities for young people. You know, the way we'll deal with the young people is that we'll take as many as possible out, send them overseas, just, you know, let them build other countries, get them out, give them a scholarship, let them go somewhere. That's not how you build a country. That's not how you encourage entrepreneurship and you build your young cadre. And as you said, Mr. G.
You got muted. Your mic is muted. You want to unmute?
Yes. Yeah. Our people are creative. They're hardworking, industrious. All they need is that little extra support from a government that has sadly abandoned them.
And I'm saying that money is there, because if we are giving it to foreign contractors and foreign workers, I would prefer as a policy to give that $214 million to our Dominican entrepreneurs. All these young people who are struggling, they want to do something, they're enthusiastic. They get so enthusiastic, after a while they get discouraged when they see the support is not coming their way. It is better to spend that money on them than to allow foreigners to take it out.
Yeah. What's so hard about this? What is so hard about this? Why is this government not doing this? You know, why? And the Dominican public need to ask themselves, you do not need a government to give you a free apartment. You do not. You need a government to help create an environment where you can work and you build, not an apartment. You build your nice 3-story building and you rent it downstairs and make more money. That's what you need. You know, this idea that you need a government to give you something for free is nonsense. And we should not be encouraging that. What we should be encouraging is for people to work hard, invest, work hard, and create wealth for themselves. And they can do a lot better. But if your only support, if your only out is to depend upon a government to provide you with an apartment, at the end of the day, you're going to be in serious problems. Because you'll not be able to service that apartment, you'll not be able to maintain it, and at the end of the day, you have nothing to show. You know, so it's a mindset that we need to change. We need to help change and create. And I'm really thankful for opportunities to meet people one-on-one on the ground. And you know, but those conversations will obviously take a lot of time, because people are, as you said, all they know is that those policies adopted by this government, and they think that that's the best thing that has happened to them. You know, but I would not feel comfortable going into a free apartment. I want to know that I work for it. And we used to have that thing, because as I tell you, and it came from just the attitude that was instilled in us in our parents. I remember when I wanted my first long pants, okay, because I was making a funny story I tell. I was after first form, about all of us in first form had long short pants when it got to the academy. When we went into second form, when I returned in September, I found I was one of 2 guys with short pants. I went home in tears, cried to my mom, I need a long pants. She said, well, okay, you need a long pants, but you have to work for it. I will give you the long pants, but you go and plant a garden. And I did my first dashing garden, Mr. G, at the age of 11 years in second form, with that promise of a long pants.
The long pants.
Okay. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it did not diminish me, but it made me understand the value of hard work. You want something, you work for it. I'm not just going to give it to you free. You work for it. And that lesson that was given to me at the age of 11 is what sustained me. I am where I am today because my parents taught me you do not get anything in life free. You have to work for it. And so when I had to study, I studied harder. I understood that if I'm going to get something, I have to work for it. It's not going to be handed to me, right? And that to me is what we need to instill in our young people. And people who believe that the best way out is to get a free something. No, that is not helping you. But it's not helping your children. It is not helping your country.
You know what they say? They say freeness brings wariness, right?
More than that, it distorts you. It lessens you. It does not promote development and growth, and it does not.
Well, what it does is make you dependent on somebody else. Now, let's go over to Lambi because we want to come back and talk about cryptocurrency. As we go over to Lambi and to give the numbers, we did cover a few areas, and some of our callers may have had some interest in maybe raising some questions of some of those, like the whole question of real GDP growth, the whole question of financing of enterprises, young people's enterprises, indigenous enterprises, diverting some of the wealth from all these other things and focusing on our local people. Change the policy of sending out all the wealth through foreign contractors and foreign workers and redirect them to our local entrepreneurs so they can build wealth and create jobs, create exports for the country, so we can see real GDP growth, because we can see more and more product, expansion of product and productivity and exports and adding value. Not only that, but as inflation comes, the prices will go up as well because we have to compete out there. So as we go to Lambi, maybe you can give the folks the number so they can give us a call and we'll take the calls.
Good evening. The Global View and Q. The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. These are all local numbers. The overseas number is 305-432-9624, and we already have a call on the line. Caller, if you're there, please go ahead. We lost that one. Let's try another number here. 449-3095-9697. Caller, please go ahead.
Well, Thomson, you really was working hard to get your education, because I can remember you seeing you in the old market under that lad you studied hard. I can never forget that. So you really studied hard.
Thank you.
See,
those were the days, my friend. That was it. Yeah.
On the overseas line, caller, please go ahead.
Good evening, Lambi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Fontaine.
Yes, good evening.
Mr. G, I'm listening to the discussion, and we're talking about growth, real growth, always, and will always be able to add new jobs, new companies. When you have growth, real growth, the dependency of social programs decrease. That means the amount of people that depending on the government for handout will now be able to find a job, because the best social program is a job. There ain't no better social program than a job. When you have Minister of Finance talking about growth, at the same time he's talking about 5% growth, he's also talking about maintaining the social programs. These guys have no vision. They don't understand how the economy works, Mr. G. They have no vision. They're incompetent, and make it worse, they corrupt. So that real growth is no growth at all. Once you cannot add people to the workforce, or you cannot attract new companies to sprout up, I don't know where that growth going. Some people will grow. That is those passport sellers and those that involved in all kind of shady dark house business. They get in the growth, but the people will always suffer. Anyway, thank you. Lambi like me to stay short, so I'm going to stay short tonight, Lambi. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you.
We have another caller. Good evening, caller. Go ahead.
Good evening to you, Lambi. This is the man himself. Good evening to Mr. J and Mr. Thomson Fontaine.
The man himself.
Mr. Thomson Fontaine, I heard you say about the people there depending on government for everything. And that is how the country running for the past 20 years under this government. I would like to know what you can put in place to attract the people, the young ones, that just believe in it's only this government that giving $500, $200, and they don't have no long-term, neither short-term plan for them for their future. So I want to know what you can do to change that mentality of this younger generation. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, caller. I'll tell you what, is a deliberate policy.
You want to take another call?
Yes.
You want to hang on one
Sure.
second?
Yes, go ahead.
Just
Yes.
take a note of that so you won't forget.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Caller, please go ahead on the overseas line.
Good evening, Lambi. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
Good. Mr. G and Dr. Thomson Fontaine. Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, I'm listening to your program and you're all making some wonderful points. But I have to say, those points is falling on deaf ears, because the Prime Minister Dominica have deliberately put himself in a position to keep Dominican poor. The Prime Minister don't have no desire, he has no inspiration to make Dominicans better. So Dominica will be what it is as long as the Prime Minister and his cabinet is in power. You look at Venezuela, was a booming economy. Chavez came there and he destroyed it. When Prime Minister Sheridan took over in Dominica, Dominica had a booming industry, and he came there and he destroyed it. And his effort, as we have seen and we have talked about, is to destroy Dominicans. He is not interested in Dominicans. So when we talk, the man is happy. The man is not worried. He tells us already, all we can do is talk. The man has been a con man from day one. When he sat across the table with the Taiwanese officials and took the check from them, and the next day he was on a plane to China. This man has been a con man, a deceiver from day one, and he made a statement lately that Roosevelt Sheridan is no fool. He's right. He's not a fool. He's been fooling the people of Dominica for a very long time, and they don't realize that. And I want to say it's sad, but it's true. Sheridan have no plan of helping the Dominican people to become better. Mark my words, it will never, ever happen under Prime Minister Sheridan. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for your comments there. Lambi, you want to take a call?
Yes, there's one more caller in here. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Lambi.
Good evening, sir.
You can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. Mr. G, you're on your panel. Good night.
How are you doing?
I listened to Dr. Fontaine, right? And I know these guys will go and say, but Dr. Fontaine do not want government to build house for nobody. And I know that's what he's saying, because definitely there are people who are unable, sick people, like I see them doing Tortora. They build it for the people and give them the key and their documents as soon as they give them the keys. There are people that need help. They cannot work, they're sick. The government everywhere will help them. But what Dr. Fontaine is actually saying is, like Scott said, as a young boy growing up, I believe Miss Charles government, or the Freedom Party rather, built 21 houses in Scott said. And all these people who pay for their houses, they add to their houses, and now if they want to sell it, and they could sell it, it is theirs. But what the government is doing in Dominica is exactly what Dr. Fontaine said. They have caused people to become poor, and then when they give you a house, you have no documents for it. You're there, as a blessing said, if you will not be able to put 25 on, you will be able to say nothing, because if you say anything, they'll put you off. Now, Dr. Fontaine, when it comes to GDP and growth and them things, when it comes between you and I'm a mumu. But what the Minister of Finance was saying today, is it that he was praising the economy in Dominica? Is it that he was doing? Let me ask you.
Yes, that's exactly what he was doing. That's exactly what he was
Dr.
doing.
Fontaine,
And the economy is doing really, really well.
Our economy can be that good, and I am saying that with a lot of strength, you know. A 90-year-old lady had a surgery. They took away two of her toes, and she could not obtain antibiotics for 3 days. Her granddaughter had to leave the hospital, go to Roseau, and buy some antibiotics, yes, and then bring it back to the hospital so the nurses could administer the antibiotics to the 90-year-old lady. And few days later, you learn more about it. It wasn't 2 toes alone. So how our economy can be good and everybody happy? The Minister of Finance is rejoicing, and this is happening in our country. When we say that, they say we washing our dirty linen in the pub. Good night.
Good night, Colin. Thank you very much. I mean, Mr. G, the evidence is there. It is as plain as day. It is there to see. We are not making things up. We are not imagining things. The fact of the matter is, as he said, you have problems in your health system. Okay, the Maricotte Hospital has been closed. It's not been open. The Portsmouth Hospital is a shadow of what it used to be. The China Frederick Hospital is no drugs, I'm told, and people are dying there who should not probably otherwise have died. So the problems are there, and it is there for everybody to see. The previous caller made the point, and I want to answer the one about the youth, but I want to join it with this question about falling on deaf ears. And he made a very important point, which is something that we've been saying consistently tonight, and that is that this government has no desire to make the lives of Dominicans better. I'll repeat. This government has no desire to make the lives of Dominicans better. And we can say that without any fear of contradiction, because we have 20 years of solid evidence. In those 20 years, Mr. G, can you name me 1 or 2 or 3 business persons who have really emerged in Dominica and made it? Can you tell me within those 20 years, 1 public servant who probably went in earning X amount is now making reasonably amount of money, that when they're about to retire, they have paid off their mortgage, or can you name those for me? It is clear. Under this government, no policy for public servants, no policy for the businesses, and importantly, no policy for the young people, other than to say, we'll provide you with a scholarship to go overseas, get out of our. Here's what I would do differently as a leader of the United Workers' Party government, a party that has shown in the past its commitment to the young people and its commitment to job creation. One of the first things that we would do is to target job creation for the young people. And we're not talking about call center jobs. Not that I'm crying that down, but I think that this has its limitations. This is not necessarily creative. You want to create jobs where people can create stuff, use what they have. And we've seen it. We have examples. We talk about coal pot. We talk about the candle industries that we used to have. We talk about this other, I was surprised to see the kinds of perfumes and so on that people are making. Mr. G talked about someone that are making cannabis oil and so on, coconut oil, different things like that. You want to target these individuals. You want to target those who are especially creative. Develop this small development unit or business unit that will every year give 2 awards for the 2 leading entrepreneurs. These are people with ideas that can create a certain minimum number of jobs, and secondly, can generate export revenues. These individuals, these young people, will be supported with the necessary resources to establish the company, to get the necessary technical inputs that they need, to get the necessary support that they need so that they can employ other young people. So we're going to create an employment path. And you repeat that over 5 years. You can easily generate a few hundred jobs, 500, 600 jobs, depending upon the scale of that. So that focus on creating jobs for the young people, that to me is the best thing you can offer a young person. I mean, imagine the frustration. As we made our rounds in February, we're going around the country. I met this particular family, went to this house, and this young man was there, very, very frustrated because he had done as he was told. He had gone to school and he had learned too well, gone to high school, gone to the college, but he was feeling embarrassed because he was still dependent on his parents who were obviously struggling. And to him, it was very embarrassing as a young person that he's been through that process, and yet his country is not offering him an opportunity. And the frustration is there, and the mother is concerned about him because he said, I'm concerned about, he's so frustrated, I'm concerned what he could even do, you know? So you have this, and this is multiplied in home after home after home in Dominica. How do we create the best thing you can do for a child after giving this child an education is to create a job employment. You want this young man to be able to take out his girlfriend and offer her a drink, take her to a nice hotel or a nice restaurant and, pay for a meal for her. You want him to be a man. You want this young man to be able to do things, if it is buying a vehicle or putting money towards a house. You want to create those opportunities. In addition to that is deliberate policy to ensure that at a very early stage, these young people have already started a track towards ownership, towards home ownership. Okay, so as a government, we'll create an opportunity for young people to begin very early on. And the way this will be done is by providing within the aid bank, providing very friendly conditions or loan-friendly conditions, where you're given very long repayment terms and very easy payment, so it does not take off too much away from you. So you can do what you want as a young person, but at the same time you can start to build towards the future. So very early on you can begin to own something, own a piece of real estate, own a piece of land. Okay? That is how you help young people. That is how you help develop young people. And these are the deliberate policy measures that the United Workers' Party, under my leadership, that is what we will do for the young people of Dominica.
And that I'm sure can be done if you ensure that you provide this matching credit grant package to them so they can build their own wealth, build their own enterprise, build their own wealth, create their own job. Once they have the income, they will be able to pay for the loan at the aid bank,
Absolutely.
They'll be happy to pay for the loan and pay for their vehicle,
Yes.
whatever it is. They'll be happy because they'll feel like they're independent. The guy will feel like a man. He has self-actualized. He has
Absolutely.
become who he wanted to be, and the same thing for the lady. So you see, you have to empower your young people. You have to let them know the sky is the limit. It's not because you're from a community somewhere in Dominica that you cannot become wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, we'll come and talk about these knowledge industries, Thomson. And we know that there you can generate wealth. But I wanted to say, if Lambi, you don't have a call, then I'll go to Dr. Thomson. Let us bring in the topic of the cryptocurrency, and then later on, after that, very soon, I will want to go to electoral reform, because you see, one of the callers asked, well, look, if the only way you can bring these ideas into fruition is for you to be in government, for your party to be in government, then you can implement some of those solid ideas, right? So I think we have to talk about electoral reform and what Dominican must have, like every other country that has it, so that they can have free and fair elections, a level playing field. But let's go to this cryptocurrency terms, because it's really worrying many people what we have put ourselves into in this cryptocurrency thing. I mean, why is it that so often we're hearing that we are getting entangled with people who are ending up in prison for fraud, for something or the other, for embezzlement, and many of them end up having our our passport as our ambassadors. They have diplomatic passports. Why is it? But you want to take a call, Lambi, before we go there?
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Good evening, Dominica. Good evening.
Good evening.
This great man. We talk on the radio station now. We're talking about, Dominica, and the way Dominica talk about 4% growth. But think of it, guys. See how wicked these guys are. They spent $53 million in Marigot to build a health center. We expect doctors to be in that health center. We expect nurses. We expect all kinds of people to be working up there to create some good paying jobs. Up to now, that health center closed. $53 million. Dominica now, if you are not supporting the government, you are being discriminated. Our brightest people in Dominica now are not working in the government to push Dominica because of that oppression by the government. That's a problem here. 3/4 of Dominicans are working, but they are working for little pay. Where is that 4% coming from? Discrimination. We have a prime minister there. He's a dictator. Overseas people will not buy into Dominica to invest in Dominica because a true investor wants to have a say in the economy so that things can move right, so that they can make profit. When you invest in, it's not charity you're doing it to make a profit. So when these guys come in and they believe they can fool Dominicans, we overseas, we are listening. To be honest with you, if I were to take this few little US to come to Dominica and say I'm going to spend it to invest in something, oh no, I would never put my money in Dominica as it is now politically. For Dominica to grow, you must have election reform where everybody can vote and vote a government of their choice. And in that case, whoever wins the election, everybody will participate. It's full-hearted in the economy. At that time, Dominica economy can grow. But as it is now with that division, no way. I see Dominica economy going nowhere. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Thomson, let me just see if I can put something to you based on what the caller just said, some of the things he said. First of all, Lambi, you want to take one call?
Yes, and there's another caller. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Dr. Thomson.
Yes, good night.
Good night, Sheridan.
What's happening?
Yeah, man. I want to tell you, I know you have this thing going on out, but are the young people listening? Are they really listening to what I can remember when I was around the age of these young people. I had to listen to the radio. My father would compel me. He had an old Grundig. And he would say, look, when it's I think it was 120, I think, because I have to ensure that I listen to the radio. Because in those days, I think was with Dominica, and those days, with Dominica, with Jeff Charles. And I had to listen to the radio. I mean, we had so much educational discussion every Tuesday night. How do we know they're listening? I mean, we assume, I don't know, they may be listening to Facebook. How do we know that they're listening? And that's the problem we have in Dominica. I do not think that they are reading enough and they are listening enough, and we have to ensure we either do a survey or something to ensure that 25, what percentage of the young people who are listening. The other thing, Dr. Thomson, about 10 to 12, 11 years ago, you had a conducted tour in the Heights of Calgary. I hope you can remember that.
Yes.
The young lady was going there. I
Yes.
was supposed to drive you around and so on.
Okay.
And you can remember the structures of the water?
Yes.
Very clearly. Structures and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is rotting away.
Incredible.
Millions of dollars have been used, and that is rotting away.
Wow.
Who is interested in agriculture? I know certainly the road is bad, and nobody is interested in agriculture. We have at present we are paying about $115 or more for a 22.5 kilogram bag of fertilizer. Why is it that the government also subsidize the price? But are they interested in agriculture? I mean, subsidize, bring it down, or do something and subsidize price. Nothing happening, you know. At the same time, we want to go into the airport business. And we had the youth camp where we should train our young people. Why didn't you train the young people to operate heavy duty areas, heavy duty machines? So by the time the airport come in, they'll be qualified. You say the name about you getting people from outside. These people should have been trained and know how to operate the heavy duty machines. And today, we'd have some trained people. And then you're saying, I over 70, I can't go into work again. But the point is, the young people better work. You see what I mean? So these are the things we have to look seriously. The young people, are they listening? Find out how much percentage they're listening. And at the same time, let us look at agriculture and the same thing. So, Thomson, thank you. Thank you, Sheridan. Okay.
Well, let me tell you, Thomson, I suspect I know that voice very well. He didn't say his name, but it's somebody I know well. And when that man talk, you have to listen. When he tell you about what used to happen in those days, he knows what was happening in those days. But let me just go back to a couple of the callers thing and what he said as well. I mean, Thomson, if you are a Dominican living overseas, or if you're a foreign investor that wants to consider Dominica, a genuine investor, would you not take a look at what is happening in the country and see what kind of closures you have in our local businesses? And if you knew Bello and you know the variety of products, and all of a sudden Bello is no longer there. And if you know candle industries, all this variety of lovely candles, and they're no longer there. And Paul Pastoronian is no longer there. And Ben Jeshu and is no longer there. And you understand what I'm saying? And DCPN is no longer there. And all these Blows Agro products and all the herbs, teas, and spices from essential oils. If all of those things are no longer there, are you going to ask yourself a question? Why is it that the local businesses are not surviving? And then when you look around Roseau Thomson, and then you knew 20 years ago, when you pass around, you'll find Libla's Boutique and Venus and this and that, all local businesses all over the place. And when you go there now and you look around and you see some other people are in the stores and the Dominican businesses are on the sidewalks, on the tents, over the gutter. And that is
heartbreaking.
But it's heartbreaking. And it will not inspire anybody to come and want to put the money, as this man said, right? So I think what we're talking about is changing that policy to put Dominicans first. Change the policy. Instead of being boastful that you're sending out $214 million by giving it to foreigners to send home to their people, change the policy, give the jobs, give the work, give the money to your people, your entrepreneurs. Let them start their businesses so that when that CBI money run out, you will have more than just a few hotels. You will also have a manufacturing sector. You have several manufacturing projects that are ongoing and exporting. You'll have water bottling plants that are ongoing and exporting. You'll have beverage plants where you don't be throwing away all your fruits when you get ripe, and at the end of you can't do anything, they get rotten, they drop. So you don't have that. You'll have real industries that are going on. And you do something, put some of that money into your cannabis and extract either cold compress or hot compress, whatever it is, and then make your medicinal products from that. What is wrong with putting your money into that rather than boasting that you're giving it to foreigners who are just sending it outside to their people?
Yeah, and Mr. G, and as the caller indicated previously, when he talked about this project in the Heights of Calavici in the 2013 elections, when we were going up for elections, right around that time, I was going around Dominica, just kind of get a sense of feel for the agriculture sector. And I was really impressed with what I saw in Calavici, in the Heights of Calavici, a very good irrigation scheme that was put in by the United Workers' Party government. Very efficient system of irrigation. And it is heart-wrenching to hear now that this is falling apart because it's not been upkept. The agriculture has been neglected. But these are the things that could have been repeated across the country and done to boost agriculture, to improve yields, to improve productivity. So there is so much that has been taken away from us as a people that we really need to focus on getting back. And certainly agriculture is one of them, and how you do that. And not only that, even in the absence, and that's the other thing I need to the public to note, that even in the absence of CBI funds, you can access these monies overseas, okay, from different lending in multilateral institutions that will give you monies for those types of projects, livelihood projects, any project that is meant to improve, to create growth, to generate income. You can borrow as a government, you can borrow at concessional rates and on lend. That still does make a very small, you can just have a small increase for what we call administrative part of the loans and so on. But make sure that the people get access to it. And once they're in the business of producing and selling, they will repay their loans. They'll be able to do it. So it's just a matter of having a deliberate policy, and that is what one thing that we'll pursue. And you talked about the knowledge industry. That is something else. As young people, we want young people to be in there doing creative things on the internet. But using it, not just spending the countless hours TikToking. A lot of young people spend hours on TikTok. I spend a small time there myself. I want a good laugh, something like one there. But in terms of using the internet to create opportunity, to gain access, to be able to work for a foreign-based company, we can do all of that. But it takes direction, it takes policy, and it takes a government that is truly concerned about the people of Dominica. And that is where the United Workers' Party comes in under my leadership. And that is one of the things that we'll continue to pursue, Mr. G, is continue to pursue opportunities for the young people of Dominica. That much we can give and we can say.
One of the things I can tell you that I have noted, Lennox Linton, who was the political leader of URB before you, he spent a considerable amount of time focusing on bringing back to the country wealth that was rightfully the country's own. And he succeeded in getting that done. He is good at that. That is one of his strengths. And I believe he will continue doing that, because the UWP is not only concerned about ensuring, it seems, that we look down the road and plan well, and that you help the people of Dominica to build wealth, add value to the natural resources, to create wealth and grow for themselves and for their communities and for their families and their countries. But you also want to ensure that you remove all the loopholes, all the little, things that allow people to get away with stuff, because you don't want that, whether you have a UWP government in office or Labour or Freedom, you want to cut out all these atrocities that could take place where people can just take away the wealth of the country and do what they feel like with it. And I believe that even if a UWP government, and Lennox Linton probably would not stand by and allow his government to do that. So I think it is safe to say that you have a combination of your past political leader who wants to ensure that nobody is gaming the system, and you now, Thomson Fontaine, as a current leader, you have a global view, a global vision of what Dominica is its rightful place, because you can look at the world and say, listen, there are things that we can produce and create in Dominica by our own hands, the hands of our young people, and that the world wants. We just have to produce them well and go out and market them to the world at an internationally competitive price. Ensure that we meet international quality standards, and thereby we're creating wealth and better living standards and a quality of life for people, and move them away, elevate them from this mendicancy and this dependency, and let the young people be able to be whoever they want it to be. And that is the point. Let them self-actualize, because that is what is creating all the frustration, because these young people, they have a lot of, they're enthusiastic. They have
a lot of energy,
a lot of energy, but they're not finding a channel to be able to place it. And so they get frustrated, and some of them fall by the wayside. You need to turn this thing around and let these young people take their rightful place and provide the support for them. Now, Thomson, we said we were going to go move along a little bit and talk about this cryptocurrency thing. And then we want to come back and talk about electoral reform because that's important. That is imminent upon us here now. And bring us up to date on what you see happening with that cryptocurrency and what kind of error we are making by allowing ourselves to get involved in all those shady deals that are so secretive. We had absolutely no idea what was going on in that thing with this gentleman until someone broke that news out there. Our government didn't tell us much about what is happening. We heard that something was signed, and we have no idea about the details. Who knew that people were going to be able to create Dominica IDs online and then be able to find a pathway towards getting an e-passport? Who knew? Until the Chinese government started making noise in America, started arresting people and charging them for fraud.
You know, anytime I start hearing Dominica is the first, I get worried. You know, and in particular in this case, because with all of the governments in the world that care about the people in all of these countries that have been looking for opportunities for the people, you'd think that if there was an opportunity in cryptocurrency, those governments would have been on the ball a long time. Okay, clearly it's not. This is a wide open space where you can make money, but you can lose equally a lot of money. And to lend the name of Dominica to something like this, it's really not helping us. And it is very concerning. And the more you dig, is the more it becomes worrisome. You know, because for example, what was being offered is a digital ID. You get the token, a digital ID. Now, Chinese individuals or with Chinese nationalities who go on, because cryptocurrency is banned in China, as soon as you try to purchase a cryptocurrency from that Tron, you are directed to another page that asks you to apply for citizenship. And now, once you have attained the citizenship, you can then apply for Tron as a Dominican citizen. Now, in February, Son indicated that he was getting 80,000 a day. 80,000. It was not clear if it was actual clients or interests, but that was the amount a day. 80,000 persons who were interested in the Dominica token. But the interesting thing is that we cannot find any trace of any tokens of Dominican being sold. There is no recorded price. It is listed. It is listed on the cryptocurrency exchanges. If you look for the Dominica coin, I think it's DMO. It is listed under the cryptocurrency trading blocks, but there is no history, which means that nothing has exchanged hands as yet. But people are making inquiries, which tells me that this whole thing was just a huge net to bait people to get Dominican citizenship. And if you're Chinese, you can then circumvent the Chinese rules. But he's playing a dangerous game with the Chinese government. I'm sure they're not going to take that lightly. It's very obvious what he's doing. He might have wanted to do it quietly, but I think after our expose, I'm sure the Chinese government is well aware of what is going on. And that particular operation, you can rest assured, will be shut down. They will not allow him to circumvent Chinese rules and regulations by allowing Chinese citizens who are already Chinese citizens to be able to trade as Dominican citizens because they have a digital ID from Dominica, or they may have obtained a Dominica passport. And the Prime Minister might have been fooled into thinking that's easy money, but there is no easy money. You have to work hard. I had to plant the garden of dashing, man. I had to make my thing and dig my holes and get my plants and so on, weed. And, you have to work hard to earn. There is no easy money. And this government seems to be after quick and easy money. At the end of the day, it's not about how it's going to benefit Dominica. It's about how it's going to benefit a few people. And that, to me, is what is so really outrageous about all of this, and why every single Dominican need to stand up and speak. we do not need to get rich quick in Dominica. We need to create a culture of work, a culture of hard work, where people will over time build wealth. That is what we need to do. That's what we need to focus on, not quick money. Quick money always have its pitfalls. You can make quick money, you can equally lose that quick money. That's not what we want. Let's go the way that has been tried and proven, that other countries are doing. That is what we need to pursue. Let us learn from other successful countries. Let us learn from the example of St. Kitts, and let us see what they're doing, and let us do it in Dominica. Not run off on a frolicle of our own, trying to do things, believing that, using fancy terms, Dominica will be the first in the metaverse to, I mean, what does that benefit us? The first to lose millions and millions in the metaverse while your people in Dominica are starving, or not starving, but are in poverty? No. I mean, really.
Well, I guess one of the questions you could ask, who in Dominica has received any benefits from that initiative yet?
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good question. And that's the nature of the pudding. Yeah? You prove something. Who has benefited? And the question is absolutely no one that we know of, at least ordinarily. Probably others did, because it is hard to imagine that there was not some exchange with this individual. He must have been given some assurances. He must have been paid something. Monies must have exchanged hands, but not to the average Dominican. And that again, because again, no desire to make the lives of the average Dominicans better. That is the policy of this government. And it is clear by their actions that whatever they do, whether it's pursuing the metaverse, whether it's pursuing Tron, whether it's pursuing cryptocurrency, it is not for the benefit of the larger population, for the benefit of a few. And that is the thing that we as Dominicans, the majority of Dominicans, need to stand against.
Thomson, I hate to do this, but I'm also receiving a number of comments on WhatsApp. And I really should have read this before, but you got consumed in some of that conversation on the crypto already. But let me just read quickly one or two comments, because you want the caller from Calibishi and spoke to you, and you had some personal experience there yourself. And somebody's now sending me something here and saying, observe the rapid decline in the banana revenue from 2000 in all of the 17 banana growing districts. Mm-hmm. They said the decline in revenue from bananas in the rural communities has created a major void of cash, and to date, nothing has replaced the banana dollar and has resulted in massive poverty and hopelessness all over the country. Mm-hmm. This is why today, government has to provide transport for students to go to school, which was once paid for by the farmers, and they have to provide school books and school bags and school shoes and school uniforms, and now given by the government because people are so poor that they can no longer afford to buy these basic school items. This is what the person is saying. That is the reality they see around them. They say gone are the days when farmers could purchase a pickup and repay it within 36 months. Gone are the days when farmers transported and expanded their homes from wood to concrete. Gone are the days when farmers would go to the aid bank and secure a loan for their children to study in universities. Gone are the days when farmers would purchase their inputs from their input cess account and not depend on any pal rep to lend a favor in order to have a few bags of fertilizer. And gone are the days when the farmers would purchase additional land to expand their farm enterprise and production. Today, farmers are selling their lands just to survive. This reality of a failed government with no policy except passport and self-enrichment.
Very well said. Yes, very well said indeed.
They put a picture for me of something here in the Castle Bruce area, and it says abandoned millions of dollars irrigation equipment in the Castle Bruce district. So it looks like it's not the Calibishi area alone.
No, it was in Castle Bruce as well. That's part of the policies of the United Workers Party government to boost agriculture. Move from rain-fed agriculture, and that was an excellent policy as well. So you increase more predictability in your production when you have you have these irrigation systems. I mean that is just fantastic.
You see, and this is why we have to relate this thing in ordinary layman's terms about this GDP thing. There is no mystery, some any highfalutin thing about this GDP thing. You know, as Paul Joseph told us, he used to have two chicken wing in his plate. Now he got one before he died. He was reduced to one. That tells a story. This is happening today, and that was years ago. So I don't know if
Yes.
half a wing people can eat now. But the point is, what is illustrating is that you don't need anybody to come and tell you whether there is growth. You can feel it right at your
Feel
own.
it, yeah. Growth that we can taste. That's what we're talking
Exactly.
about.
Exactly. So this is
Yeah.
the thing. And I think the politicians in office need to understand that people are not idiots, you know. They can count money. They know when they have and they know when they don't have. They know when they go to the grocery shop to buy something and they wanted 20 items, but they have to put back 10 because what they have in their pocket cannot stretch beyond those 10 items, right? So you don't have to try to give some people in. This is the point. And so when some minister for finance comes and talk about GDP in that way, talk about 5% as glorifying that that's a big deal. But then a lot of his supporters in his constituency, I'm sure they're not feeling that
You
huge.
don't feel it.
They're not feeling
It
it.
reminds me. It reminds me of a parent whose child has consistently been failing, bringing home F in the report card. Suddenly, the child gets a 50%, and they expect the parent to be glorifying them because suddenly they have scored 50% when they have just been failing all along. It's the same attitude of this government. I mean, yeah, it's but at the same time, you need to do more. You should have been doing that 10 years ago. You know, where were you all this time? Where have you been? Now that you're on your way out of government, now you're trying to fool the people into thinking that something is happening. No, the people know differently.
Yes, and you know, somebody just sent me another little note here. Because you see, these are practical things that people are looking at. These are not highfalutin things, little things that you see. I will never forget Lambi, where we live by the public works garage. Those 15 little houses you see there, concrete houses, they were built by our own labor, you know, they call that kudme. So the government provided the materials, and the people who are going to be the owners provided the labor. And our families got those houses at a low price because we provided the labor, and everybody had to work on every house. Or you didn't know which house you were going to get, your family was going to get. Because when all the house finished, they put in a number hat and you dip on whichever number you pull out. So everybody had to make sure every house is good. You understand? But what it
Yes,
tells you
yes.
is that in those days, you had the public works working on roads. You had people like Donny Boyd building government buildings, you know, and the public works was doing all kinds. There was a guy called Ray, I think it was his name was. This guy used to make parts. He used to fabricate parts for equipment, all equipment that would never work again. This man would make the parts right there. Why is it that we have shut down the public works? A lot of our kids could go and learn skills right there. Why did we shut that down? It did such great things for Dominica. It transformed a lot of people's lives. I remember this man, after Nesty working there and Loverty, people like that working there, you know, may they rest in peace. But those guys were fantastic. They knew what they were doing. And a whole range of these were actual real Dominicans doing great things right there, you know. All of a sudden the public works is no longer there. Where is it? What has happened to it? Why couldn't it be doing a lot of the works that we're talking about getting done? Why couldn't some of that money have stayed right there so more young people could go and get their skills training right there and learn to fabricate parts and do things, learn mechanical skills and so on? What is wrong with us? Why are we doing that to ourselves? I just said I would raise those things because people are sending me those little notes, and it shows that people understand what is happening. What I think they need a voice now for they can stand up and say, you know what, we need to stand up now and take what is rightfully ours. Our young people deserve better. They need to be able to come onto their own. So, Thomson, one of the reasons why we have to say that is because in the air now is all this talk about electoral reform. As I indicated earlier in my opening remarks, in my talking points, this government is not going to give anybody any electoral reform. Because you remember very early o'clock, how many years ago that the Electoral Commission was undertaking electoral reform, And this email came and said, this fellow doing madness down there. They want to go and do all kind of things which will change your winning legacy. And immediately after that, the membership of the Electoral Commission changed. And that was the end of electoral reform. Until now, the discussion has, gone on and on. But it's how many years it's taken, and discussion is still going on. Now, we have had a first report, Thomson, and some of the things that were in there, we thought they fell far short of what should be in there. We have a second report, which the Prime Minister said should be due anytime. Maybe he has it now. He promised to circulate it. I'm not sure he has circulated yet, but I hope that he will, according to his word. Even without seeing that report, Thomson, because we spoke about that before, there are a couple of things I would probably find Dominicans should find not acceptable. And there are certain things that Dominicans should say, yes, we must have that. I believe the whole question of re-registration in Dominica is imperative. In Dominica, complete re-registration. I believe that Dr. Andre so eminently defined the whole question of residency, but residency is where you live. If you live in New York, you're a resident in New York. If you live in Dominica, you're a resident in Dominica. That is where you live. You reside there, right? Your place of abode. So when you come to Dominica, you come in to visit, and then you're going back home to where you live in New York. If you go to Vegas to visit somebody, and you come back home to Goodwill, you're coming back home to where you live in Goodwill. So that it is so clear. So I think the residency thing has to be strictly enforced. But I believe as we come further to the other phase that we're now looking at, what I'm hoping we'll see in the report, one, I'm hoping that it'll be agreed that all the political parties will have free access to all the media houses. There should be no gimmicks. There should not be any encumbrances. All of them should just have free access. It doesn't mean I say free. I don't mean they're not going to pay, I'm saying they should have access. You should be able to go in there and they will allow you to pay for your stuff. And obviously, if you're going to say something libelous, they're not going to publish it. If you're going to say something, But the point is all of the political parties should have equal access to all media houses. I don't think anybody should ask for their thing to be vetted, for example, and say, okay, before we put it out, we have to vet it. If we don't like it, then we're going to either dismiss it or either ignore it or send it to the Electoral Commission and complain and say, take 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And something you wanted to go out today is going to go out 3 weeks from now if they allow it. The law cannot allow that kind of leeway to any media house. It has to be clear. You have to allow fair access by all political parties equally. And now the other thing that I am hoping that you can comment on as well, Thomson, is that, you see this thing about the campaign finance reform? I see it as a very simple thing. Pass a law that says this is the limit that you can accept from any one person. Let us just say you say $50, and you say, all right, in that constituency, you have 2,000 people. So you can accept $50 per constituent, right? So 50 by 2,000, all right? Whatever figure it is that we agree on. But don't put it an exorbitant figure. You're going to say you're going to accept 10 million from this, 10 million to that, because obviously, who's going to give Dominica, a political party in a small island, $10 million, unless they have some ulterior motive to hoping to get all of that back and more. All right? So the point I'm making is that it needs to be fixed, and I don't think they should postpone that. I heard the Prime Minister, he said, look, I'm fed up now. It's time for us to get this thing done. It's time for this man to send this report. I agree with him. It's time to get it done. But here's what I want to suggest. Do not try to go overboard and manifest what you had said is that this thing going to change your willing legacy. So you're not going to do so. You want to do something to give you a political advantage. That will not work. It did not work in Jamaica, they fixed theirs. It did not work in St. Kitts, they fixed theirs. It did not work in Antigua, they fixed theirs. So they fixed this thing in all of these islands, and therefore the systems are working much better now. Less bloodshed in some of those areas, less turmoil. They fixed it, all right? So that is what we need to do in Dominica. And I just find that we're taking so long to do it as though it's some kind of rocket science when other people have done it before. Just look at what they've done. It's right there. I'm just making those points, and I'm hoping that you might expand. You don't necessarily have to agree with me, Thomson, but these are some of my my own thoughts on some of that. And I don't think we really needed to Dennis Byron to tell us that. Frankly, we could have arrived at that. I'm pretty sure that a lot of that was in that report that was given by the civic organizations when they presented a reported recommendation to electoral commission many months ago. Your thoughts, Thomson?
Yes, indeed, Mr. J. In fact, all of these recommendations have been in previous reports from, the OAS mission, the Commonwealth mission. We could have done that through a lot less pain, a lot less distractions. I mean, that is something that could have been done many years ago. It has not been done. We are hearing now of a cabinet session, a parliament session scheduled for the 25th of April. So we are hoping that at least the first part, which has to do with the registration of voters and the clean list. And I agree with you totally, completely, that re-registration should be complete. All right. We should just tear up this old list and re-register voters. People never had a problem before. Before Labour Party started importing voters, I never heard one Dominican living overseas complained about being disenfranchised before when there were elections. Elections were announced. If they wanted to come, they would spend their money and come down and vote and so on. There was never that issue. All of a sudden, people said, "Oh, you should not disenfranchise me if I'm living in New York or if I'm living in New Jersey." That should not even be an issue. Okay, residency is key. That has to feature very highly, and we have not seen the legislation that is being brought before Parliament. What we know, it will most likely not involve anything having to do with electoral, with campaign finance, because that is supposed to be part 2 of the report from Sir Byron, which is what he has not yet received. The part dealing with campaign reform. And you're right about that, what you're suggesting, Mr. G. In fact, in Barbados, that's how it is done in Barbados. It is $10 per constituent. That's it. You're restricted to spend $10 per constituent in your constituency, and that applies to everybody. So they have clean elections, they have nice elections, no exorbitant funding, no bone even to their own economy, far less to the economy of another country, and life goes on nicely. So we are unnecessarily complicating this. We are where we are because this government had a policy to win at all costs. And that policy has put us in a place where we have lost our favored place in the region. We're now very much towards the end of the pack in every single metric. If you're looking at employment numbers, if you're looking at poverty levels, if you're looking at infrastructural development, if you're looking at hotel development, if you're looking at tourism, if you're looking at airport transformation, any of those metrics, we are dead last or near to the bottom, competing probably with Haiti. That is the legacy of this government. And the question is, how do we change that? Well, the way we change that, Mr. G, is by people being very firm on this electoral reform. All right, we have to ensure, and I said before, and I'll say it again, that if we do not get it, we will take it. Okay, we have to insist. Literally, there should be no compromise on this issue of electoral reform. Absolutely not. We need to get this clean voters list. We need to get an environment where people will have a chance to choose the government that they want. A government that is not forced upon the backs of the Dominican Republic. There should be no compromise on this. And this should go for labor rights, for freedom rights, for United Workers' Party supporters. Every single person in Dominica can agree at least on this one thing, that we need a level playing field, that we need reforms that will ensure that we have free and fair elections in Dominica. Because I'm saying this to you, particularly if you're a Dominica Labour Party supporter today, you may think that you want to support your party for life, but when your party loses, as they will in the next election, you're going to be the one now demanding the equal playing field, all right? So it's for everybody. It will benefit equally all of the parties. What that will mean effectively is that the parties have to put forward programs, and you are going to benefit from it, because if parties are forced to compete on their programs, if parties are forced to compete on how they can better create jobs and how they can better create opportunities and how they can better create growth, If parties can compete on that, who is going to benefit? It is the voter. You're the one that's going to walk away with the job, because it will not matter whether you are for this party or this other party. If the economy is creating jobs, you will get to work. You will get to be able to provide for your family. So that is what we're talking about. It's something that should not have any. And if and when there is a call for protest, Labour Party supporters, I'm calling upon you, come out with us and march in protest for electoral reform, okay? Because that is something that the country can only benefit from, and every single person in the country will benefit from.
Now, here's the thing, Thomson. If we go back to the history of this thing, this whole question of electoral reform, what happened then with the Electoral Commission then, and this email that came out and says, you know, this thing, any amendments there that they're pursuing will affect your winning legacy. That is still the same, because if, for example, the incumbent wants to remain in power for a number of years again, obviously that thing stands. He still feels the same way, right? So I do not think that electoral reform is going to be handed to Dominicans on a silver platter. Electoral reform is not for any one political party, as you say. It is for the country to have a good system so that it can work smoothly. You remove all this contention. You don't need to have all that contention, all that personal thing. This person not talking to their cousin or their brother or their sister, and they fighting each other, and and all this kind of thing. Then you're either red or you're blue or you this. It is not necessary. You don't necessarily have that same situation in every country. Now, here's what I think, Thomson. I think that, and I'm going to put the question to you. Do you believe that the presence of 5,000 people in Roseau, peacefully gathering and demanding electoral reform, will that help to ensure that the government gets the message that the people want? I'm saying just 5,000, but you'd already got some 15, 16,000 people to support it in the last election. I'm saying just 5,000. Maybe you might be able to get 10, but the point is, it costs money, right? Now, will Dominicans at home and abroad, and friends of Dominica at home and abroad, be willing to contribute to a fund to raise the money to have 5,000 people gather at some point to just peacefully indicate to the government that we feel very strong, we're very firm, we want electoral reform, we're fed up of having all this zazi-muzai in our elections. We want a level playing field and let the chips fall where they may, who win. But they will win fair and square, and everybody accept whoever win and who lose. Is that something that may be required in order to get that electoral reform? I don't see that the government there now is making any moves to hand over electoral reform to anybody, not from what I've been hearing.
Mr. J, absolutely. We have to be prepared to take to the streets, if necessary, to push for electoral reform. We have to be prepared for this as an alternative. And we have to be prepared for the people of Dominica to come out. And while I understand the need for our party to raise funds and so on for just that purpose, I believe that this matter is so critical that people have to be prepared to say, okay, I'm gonna find my way into town, regardless. I mean, we do it for Carnival, we do it for other events. We don't wait for a party to pay a bus for us to come into town. We do it in our thousands. We can do it for a situation like electoral reform. In 2017, we had close to 4,000 or 5,000 people there that sent a very, very strong message. The government got so fearful that they arrested myself and Honorable Linton and Mr. James and so on. Charges were thrown against us. I'm still before the courts for that. Mr. Linton is still before the courts for that. So that was the impact we had in 2017. We can do it again. Okay, we can do it again. So yes, the party will continue to raise funds to meet those who cannot. But I believe that if people are serious about electoral reform, when the call goes out, okay, we're going to see what's going to happen on the 25th, see what kind of bill is going to come through. But if there is any kind of zazi-muza, if there is any attempt to tilt the playing field to make it uneven, to make it less than level, then the people of Dominica has to be prepared to stand up. Okay, and that is something that we should not compromise on. Okay, this is about the future of the country, showing that you have a government that will work for the people of Dominica, and the people need to show their support. And that is how you do it. You show your support by coming out peacefully to protest and sending a very clear message to the government of Dominica that we are not going to take no for an answer, that we need electoral reform and we need it now. So again, if we don't get it, we have to be prepared to take it. And the way we're going to take it is through protest, action, is through staying in the streets of Roseau and doing what is necessary. And I believe that the people of Dominica can do it. We've done it before, we can do it again.
Now, here's the thing. When I spoke about raising funds, I was not really saying that there should be an initiative of one political party. I'm thinking it is the people of Dominica. The people of Dominica, of course, there has to be leadership and there has to be organizers and so on who are going to put it together. But I think the people of Dominica, if they really, and I think they should want what all the other countries have, if they really want electoral reform that's going to level the playing field and remove all this contention from the elections, go to a real, another level in our democracy, where you can say, okay, that's this one thing, let's forget about it. We know parties will win and they'll come with their platform, they'll talk about their programs and their policies. If we're impressed with them, we'll vote for them because we'll see how it's going to impact our life and make a difference in life of our family, our children, and so on, right? This is what it should come down to, not whether somebody buys a ticket for you from Antigua or from St. Martin or from wherever, New York and so on. It should not be that. And our law should ensure that it is not that. There should be absolutely no bribery and treating in any elections. I mean, what good does that do? You cannot just, tilt a thing in the favor in one direction of one person merely because they have more money than the other one, because then they don't have to do anything. Because all that happened is that they bought people's votes and they came and they won. They did not win on a platform of programs, right? And policies and strategies and economic development plans and so on. They did not win on that. They don't have to deliver that. And that is why, Thomson, we started talking about, and that's where we have to connect all of the dots for the big picture. That is why we're looking at the whole question of GDP that the finance minister spoke to us about. Yes, he says GDP look great, but 3/4 of the Dominicans say, but wait a minute now, I only can eat one wing now. What he uses that GDP thing to all of those people when in fact it does not translate into improving their quality of life or their living standards. They cannot save, right? What good is that to them? So I'm saying that all those things are connected. If you put a proper government of your own choosing, the government know that it has to be beholden to you. It's not controlling you. The government knows that they have to come good with their programs. Government's not going to go into cryptocurrency deals with fraudsters. Government not going to appoint a whole set of ambassadors that are bogus in the first place who end up in jail. They're not going to take that chance because they know that will be removed from office. I'm just making those comments because this is what other countries are experiencing. That is why I'm noting that.
Yes, indeed. And what that speaks to, Mr. G, is the importance of getting together. And that's why I said, even when we start the process, we need to at least have the support of the labor rights and others. It has to be a joint effort. That should not be left for any one party, as you rightly indicated. It has to be a joint effort because after all, it's going to benefit equally all of Dominica and every single party in Dominica. So we are hoping that people will come out and do that support. But at the same time, we're also hoping that this will see the legislation that is going to go to Parliament, hopefully on the 25th of April, and that there'll be nothing that we cannot live with, that it is what has been agreed upon already in the report that was circulated previously by Sir Dennis, with the exception that we need, as you said, the re-registration to take place in Dominica. No re-registration overseas. Okay, if you want to be re-registered, you come to Dominica and do it. That it should be done in Dominica. and that we would guarantee the integrity of the residency criteria. That to me are non-negotiable. And I'm hoping that that is part of whatever package is going to go to Parliament.
No, Thomson, here is the thing. There is no reason why we should be doing this. At least this is the 21st century. It's a latte clay, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're much more enlightened now. We all can do a little arithmetic, right? When we went to school, we didn't need our school fees. We can do a little. We can add and multiply and subtract. Here's something somebody said. All Sheridan has to do to remain in power, if you don't fix the laws, right? If you don't do the electoral and campaign finance reforms and fix the residency requirements, right? You don't fix those, and then all he has to do to remain in power is to target Dominicans in 6 seats, just 6 seats in Dominica. Target Dominicans living in Antigua, in St. Martin, the French Islands, and so on, just to go to vote in 6 seats, right? And he doesn't have to bother about targeting people in London and in New York and in Toronto and those kind of things.
Right.
And then these Dominicans can come in via ferries and boats and not necessarily even aircraft. So the person is saying, look, why is it that is the way to win an election? Why not win an election fair and square based on your programs? If you have good, solid plans and so the people will want to vote for you. If you're a charismatic leader that can show that you really can enthuse people about your plans and programs, they will be happy to vote for you. But it cannot be that you make a plan to remain in power for 50 years and then the way I'm going to execute that is to just bribe people from 3 or 4 or 5 islands.
Right.
And that is what I'm saying, that has nothing to do with any one political party. It has to do with Dominicans, and we have to develop that mentality that we are really one people. We are really one people. Yes, we have maybe twice the population outside than we have inside. But all those people who are outside there, they're very patriotic. They love Dominica. They want to contribute in some way. They want to see Dominica grow and develop. Many of them want to come and retire there. So I don't see why we shouldn't just take a leaf from the success stories we have in St. Kitts and Jamaica and Barbados and some of those countries and just simply do the reforms that they have done successfully, level the playing field and eliminate that contention and get it right. What are your thoughts on that, Thomson?
Yes. Mr. James, as you said, Mr. G, as you said, it is not rocket science. It is actually very, very simple. Okay. And you gave all the right reasons why we need to get this right. Because it is not a very difficult thing to manipulate. It's not very costly. It's not even very costly. Because you can have targeted votes in a few constituencies and you can win those constituencies. So getting it right is the important thing, and I am waiting to see the legislation that is being proposed. I remember the last time the government of Dominica tried to push through legislation that was not people did not agree to. They were forced to take it back because they were protests outside of the parliament. That was the last time that happened. So we have shown our willingness in the past to demonstrate against any kind of something that is considered to be less than fair. And what is fair is very clear. The residency criteria is very clear. Must be living in Dominica. In fact, even the laws as they are currently, they're good. It's just a matter of enforcement and punishing those who try to go around it. That is what the focus should be, really. So my hope is that we get the right legislation in place, and the right legislation means a new voters list, a clean voters list that will set the basis for free and fair elections going forward in Dominica. And that's what we're asking for. And that's what we'll continue to push for, together with everybody that's interested in ensuring that this in fact happens. So we're going to hold the Prime Minister to his word on electoral reform, and feeling which we, the people of Dominica, has to be in a position to take the actions afforded to us under our constitution, including protest action, to drive home our point to Dominica and the international community.
As we wind up, Thomson, let me just express my own thoughts on that because that is so important. I don't believe that electoral reform is going to be handed out willingly. Why? Because it creates a more uncertain future for the incumbent. And that's the reason why they've been resisting reform, because they know that it will create uncertainty about their winning legacy. And they said so in writing. I believe that the people of Dominica will have to demand it, and will have to show that they're really serious and they really want it, and they're not going to stop until they get it. I think they have to show that, because, and I'm not saying, and I'm saying people of Dominica, I'm saying all of the people of Dominica, because you see, the people who support the Labour Party must not get the impression that this is something UWP or Free Farmers. No, whatever reforms take place, it'll be for any government in the future. That will level the playing. So, because remember, the Labour Party was in opposition for many, many years, and so was the Freedom Party, right? No, so is the United Workers' Party. So every political party takes its turn at being in opposition. So you don't want to pass laws that are just meant to benefit you while you're in office, because the next government that comes, it will put you at a disadvantage.
Exactly.
So you want to put laws in there that are free and that are fair and that will benefit everybody equally, no matter which political party you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thomson, the time goes by quickly when you're having fun. I think I frankly, I was very happy about this discussion tonight. I like the fact that we broke down this GDP thing there. I think a lot of ordinary people understand it a lot better and what it really means. So I believe when people hear the minister talking about GDP 5%, they will understand, but wait a minute, what about me?
What about and it's supposed to impact you. That's where it matters. It's supposed to impact you.
I'm still eating less chicken now. What about me? So where is it? Who getting it? Who getting the benefit from that largest, this big thing you're talking about? Where is it? I'm not seeing it in my household, right? I'm not seeing it in my job. All right, so I'm saying that I thought the conversation was great. I like the fact that we dwelt on this electoral reform a little bit, because that is very, very important, and it looks like it's at hand. Because if there is the parliament is being convened for the 25th of April, as I'm hearing, we don't know yet what is going to be on the order paper. But is it likely that this thing will go on the order paper even before the document is shared, as the Prime Minister promised? He said he would share it with the public. And then he would have all these consultancies. He had appointed a group to go out there and do the consultancies. Is that going to happen, or is he just going to take it to Parliament as it is and break another promise?
Yes, indeed, and that is the question that needs to be asked. That's why I'm saying I'm waiting very patiently to see. We've not seen the other paper, we've not seen the legislation, but we are hoping that this legislation, that they've learned the lesson from the last time when the people of Dominica stood up. We protested. The people went by the Parliament. They made their voices heard. He was forced to withdraw it. We just want something that is free, that is fair to the people of Dominica, including the residency criteria, including who can vote, under what conditions you can vote. We need this to be clear. And I hope that that's what we'll see, Mr. G, hopefully on the 25th of April. And that will just be the first step. But we'll have the second step, or the second passage of legislation, which covers campaign finance reform, because that is also critically important to a free and fair system.
I'll tell you what I'd like to see from tomorrow, and then for the few days coming. I would like to see Matt Peltier, who's one of our journalists in Dominica, and I'd like to see all the other journalists seek out the government and ask them about that document that they said they were going to make public. I would like to see them call the opposition, the people in Parliament know that are the opposition, because if these things are going to be tabled in Parliament, they have to share copies of that with the opposition, with the persons who won the seats and those persons who were appointed as senators. I would like for Matt to call him and ask him, have you received any papers for the sitting of Parliament that is coming up on the 25th? Or when do you expect to receive? Do you know what's in the order paper? And I would like to ask them, well, if the electoral reform is on the order paper, if the legislation is there, What are your views on it? What would you like to see in those laws? Because we remember, it is those persons who are in the opposition in parliament now who are going to have to vote on that.
Yeah.
But we really have not heard their views in any way about electoral reform. So we have no idea what they're going to vote on, or what they're going to vote for or against. Yes, they are in the minority, so it doesn't even matter whether they vote or not because they're totally outnumbered. But the point is, we would like to know, because this is a democracy, both from the government side and from the opposition side, what are their thoughts on that? Because you see, we have made certain premises. There have been promised that, listen, we're going to ask the opposition leader to just let's go ahead with whatever Sir Dennis Byron give us. But from what he has given us so far, Thomson, I have to say it has fallen short of some of the things that we really want. And I've listened to people's views and opinions that they expressed on that. Many people are not satisfied with what they've heard so far. And I'm talking about ordinary people, I'm talking about legal experts and all of that. They say there's some pitfalls, there's some traps in some of that, and we need to avoid those pitfalls by putting in the right legislation in place now. Take a leaf from the country that Sir Dennis Byron is from, for example, St. Kitts, because they have good stuff there. Take some from theirs and put the right thing in there, right? So, Thomson, well, all good things come to an end.
Yes, indeed.
Want to wind up any parting comments from you?
Well, just to really thank our many listeners, those who called, the many listeners on Facebook, very active Facebook engagement tonight. I was able to read through the comments as we were talking, and I want to thank those of you that stayed with us throughout the night. You know, we continue to struggle. We continue the fight because we believe in what we're doing. We believe that the better days of Dominica are ahead. We've come through a very dark period in Dominican history. All sorts of different things. We had just seen another article today, Mr. G, in the BBC. Probably Mark will take it up tomorrow. We've just seen another article in the BBC where individuals have scammed old people in the United Kingdom of billions of dollars, and Dominica is right at the middle of it. Again, because we have unregulated firms in Dominica in this cryptocurrency metaverse of Roosevelt Skerrit that are scamming old people in England. And the name of Dominica is there in the article as facilitating this. So, you know, a lot of things are not going right for us. We're in a very dark place in Dominica. We need to see the light. We need to get over that very dark history of ours and really get to a place where we can see a reversal in poverty. We can see an increase in economic growth. We can see the young people of Dominica really taking their place in developing the country by growing businesses, by investing in the country, by taking an interest in what is going on. Our young people are very disinterested right now. They're very until, you know, you probably start to shake a little zero in their face. And so we need to do better by our young people. So I firmly believe that the better days are ahead for us. The United Workers' Party, we are prepared to work with the people of Dominica to push through electoral reform that will set a very level playing field that we can then compete in. And we continue to push for elections as soon as we have those electoral reforms so that we can begin the process of rebuilding this country. There's a lot that needs to be done, a lot of work that needs to be done. We want to encourage your support, those of you that are listening, and just want to thank you again, because without your support, without your encouragement, we are not able to do it. But together we can do it, together we can stand, and together we can build a Dominica that is prosperous, a Dominica that will provide in particular to the young people. And so I just want to say good night, Mr. G, and thank you again for the opportunity. It was indeed a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to future programs like this, where we can take our time and really go through the issues without stress, you know, just explain to the people and have a conversation in the living rooms across Dominica, which is what is very important. We'll continue that process, Mr. G. Our Meet the Talk continues later this month. I'll be in Dominica going through, again, continuing those tours of the villages and so on, you know, talking to the people, getting to know the Dominican public. Very excited about that. It's part of the strategy that we have to visit every single home in Dominica, every single village, to meet different groups, different organizations, and so we are continuing that. I'm not able to do it continuously, but certainly I can do it from time to time at least, and I'm very happy that we're continuing in the month of April.
Yes, and thank you so much, Thomson. And I also want to thank all of the persons who were able to call tonight to get through on the calls. But I want to particularly thank those persons who are on Facebook and YouTube with us. Very nice comments. We did not get much time to pull out some of your comments to read them out. But I mean, I'm very happy. I saw some very, very nice comments there that were made. And it means that people were engaged and people were sharing in the information. And I'm happy to know that as Dominicans, we can be always coming together like this and sharing and exchanging, and so that we can help each other. No one of us has all of the answers. And so if we put all our heads together, they say 2 heads are better than 1, right? And so essentially, thank you, everybody, and good night to everybody on Facebook, on YouTube, and who are listening at home and abroad, everywhere, the Q family as well. And good night, Sherwin and Lambie and Thomson. Thank you so much for all of the work that you did for us here tonight. Appreciate it. But I suspect that we have to come back, Thomson, because remember, this electoral reform thing could go to Parliament, and we're going to have to come back and discuss it. And we certainly have to come back and discuss it because it's very, very important. So I think we will. And then, of course, one of the things that we did not get to talk about, which we'll have to discuss next time, is the whole question of the financing of that airport. Everything looks so uncertain, and I hope that is not really the case. But in terms of all the planning requirements and the financing and so on, there's a lot of question marks there. And I hope somebody can clarify those questions. Somebody from the government or from the organization that's the company that is doing this. I hope they can clarify some of those because a lot of it looks uncertain. All right. So, Thomson, thanks a lot. And I hope
Thank you, Mr. T. Appreciate it. Thanks, Lambie. Always a pleasure.
Hope you have a great night or what's left of it.
What's left of it, yeah.
Right. All right, Lambie, take care. Good night, everybody.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
Out my window, and I'm thinking of tomorrow, and I'm wondering what the future will be. Thinking of the children who are the victims of oppression, beaten down by wars and eaten up by starvation. I'm saying, when there's ugly will be over, and the children can go out and play. I wanna see when all oppression will be done, and the people will rise up and say, freedom at last, freedom at last. So free, freedom has come, freedom has come. Oh yeah, sure heart, sitting in seclusion, I'm in my meditation, and I can hear the voice of the sufferers cry for justice. Ooh. Another ugly war is raging, threats of nuclear war is rising, and the world is gripped by fear of mass destruction. I'm saying, when there's ugly war be over, and the children can go out and play. I wanna see when all oppression will be done, and the people will rise up and say, freedom at last, freedom at last. and sorrows. There is no future for the youths of tomorrow. Yeah. So many mothers crying, too many funerals. Oh, when will it end? Yeah, when the stormy will be over, and the children can go and play. I wanna see when all oppression will be done, and the people will rise up and say, freedom must go.
From that first day, Blair was hooked. Lucky for him, Lobos had amateur fights, called smokers, every Saturday. And he fought every week. As far as the crowds were concerned, he was a rangy little upstart from north of the border, taking on the tough local guys. When he started fighting, the crowds hated him.
They want to kill me.
What do you do to get the crowd on your side?
I put on an unbelievable show. This is kind of like how it goes. I go in with like a ton of booze, and I don't speak Spanish that well, so it's not like I'm speaking to the people or anything like that. They don't know, but like I know that like this person starts to come out. I get to a point where like I'm able to like put on a show, and I don't mind to be booed. It's crazy because like every time it's like that, and then in the end everybody's cheering.
That must be an amazing feeling to see that, and to know that you did